into the welfare of workers in the export processing zones. This is popularly known as EPZs in Mombasa and Kilifi counties. This motion is by the chairperson, Standing Committee on Matters Labor and Social Welfare. The consideration of the joint report of the National Assembly, a Departmental Committee on Matters Justice and Legal Affairs, and the Senate Standing Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, as well as Human Rights, on its consideration of the report of the National Dialogue Committee, popularly known as NADCO, and the report of the Multi-Sectoral Working Group on the realization of the two-thirds gender principle is being considered at the Senate this afternoon. Having considered this motion at the National Assembly last week, the Heritage and Museums Bill, Senate Bills number 8 of the year 2023, by the chairperson, Standing Committee on Matters Labor and Social Welfare, as well as the County Hall of Fame Bill, Senate Bills number 18 of the year 2023, sponsored by Senator Miraj Abdullahi, are some of the bills that the House is set to debate this afternoon. Allow me to take you through some of the other bills lined up for debate this afternoon, and that is the Wildlife Conservation and Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 46 of the year 2023 by Senator Jones Maruma, the Senator for Taita Taveta County. The Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi, is already in the chambers this afternoon. My name is Gladys Mungai. Allow me to hand over for this live proceeding.
Mwenyezi Mungu, tutakusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Tutakuomba utuajalie tuyatende na kufikia mambo yote atakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Clerk, do we have quorum? Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
Well, there is a 10-minute quorum bell at the commencement of business this afternoon, as directed by the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi, currently presiding over the business of the House this afternoon. As you await for that quorum to be attained, our dear viewers, allow me to keep taking you through the highlights in the order of business this afternoon, where the leader of the majority party this afternoon is expected to lay 11 papers on the reports of the Auditor General, on, among others, the financial statements of J.M. Karaoke Memorial County Referral Hospital in the county government of Nakuru for the year ended 30th of June 2024, and the financial statements of Muranga Level 5 Hospital under the county government of Muranga for the year ended 30th of June 2024. Those are just some of the reports, papers on the reports by the Office of the Auditor General after having audited these institutions. But away from that, the Senator of Marsabit County, Senator Mohamed Chute, is this afternoon set to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Roads, Transportation and Housing regarding the delayed completion of Sololo Level 4 Hospital in Marsabit County. And this statement will be sought pursuant to Standing Orders number 53, subsection 1. In the statement, the Senator wants the committee to provide an update on the current status of the construction of Sololo Level 5 Hospital, including the hospital's total size in square meters and the percentage of the work completed, pending tasks, and the reason for the prolonged delay and the revised timeline for the completion. The Senator also wants the Committee on Transport and Roads as well as Housing to outline the original cost of the project, any cost variations over the years, indicating the total investment by the Kenya Defence Forces, KDF, towards the hospital construction, and whether additional funds have been allocated towards the project, and the total estimated cost to completion. And finally, that the committee should specify when the residents of Sololo will be able to access the services from the institution. So that is, in a nutshell, a statement on the completion of the construction of Sololo Level 5 Hospital in Marsabit County that is set to be sought by the Senator for that county, the Senator for Marsabit County. Allow me to hand you over as the quorum has been attained.
Call the first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of a visiting delegation of members of Parliament and staff from the Parliament of Zambia. The delegation is undertaking a benchmarking study visit in the Center for Parliamentary Studies and Training. Now, Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. The Honorable Mulungo A. Chisangano, MP, the First Deputy Speaker and also Chairperson and Leader of the delegation. The Honorable Stephen Kampyongo, MP, the Honorable Machila Jamba, MP, the Honorable Remember Mutale, MP, the Honorable Anthony Kasandwe, MP, the Honorable Harry Kamboni, MP, Ms. Cecilia Sikatele, Mr. Tanaison C. Nyangu, Dr. Mwemba Moungo, Mr. Roger Sambo, Ms. Muka Kazela, Ms. Kumiwe Kaba. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow Honorable Senators to take their seat before I make the remaining 2 communications. Now, Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of a visiting delegation of commissioners and senior staffers of the Parliamentary Service Commission of the Transitional National Legislature of the Republic of South Sudan. The delegation was on a duty tour on structure, functions, and operations of the Kenya's Parliamentary Service Commission. Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. The Honorable Stephen Ajongo Akol, MP. The Honorable Mary Bicencio Wani, MP. The Honorable Regina Joseph Kaba, MP. The Honorable Regina Richard Aban, MP. The Honorable John Orach Nyiker. Mr. Dominic Bandima Alba Paul. Mr. Henry Amoko. Mrs. Aker Tracy Aru. Mr. James Thiam Luol Nyang. And Anay Deng Anay. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate, on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish you a fruitful visit. Now, Honorable Senators, again, I wish to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting students and teachers from Sunside Learning Center, Kajiado County. The delegation comprises of 31 students and 4 teachers who are undertaking a study tour to the Senate. Now, Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate, on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish them all the very best during their visit. I will, Honorable Senators, call upon Senator Boni Khalwale under 1 minute to extend a word of welcome to the delegation from Zambia. And I'll call upon the minority leader under 1 minute to extend a word of welcome the delegation from the Republic of South Sudan. And thereafter, I'll call upon the Senator for Kajiado County, Senator Seki, to extend a word of welcome to the students from his county. That to be done under 1 minute each. So we start with Senator Boni, the minority leader, then Senator Seki, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's an honor for me to acknowledge the presence in this House of our colleagues from Zambia, and I do welcome you warmly, honorable members. Honorable members, Kenya and Zambia have been one and the same from the early 60s. I recall in 1963, so we read, that when we got independence, 1 year later, Zambia followed suit and you got your independence. And that friendship was maintained up to and including the support that especially the government of Zambia gave to the people of South Africa for them to get their independence. Mr. Speaker, I cannot stop without telling the people, of the honorable members from Zambia, my experience when I came there. Mr. Speaker, I went to the restaurant and they gave me a menu. So I didn't know which food to pick. So I looked and then I saw somewhere they had written Ingoko Nishma. So I pointed on that one. And when they brought me, Mr. Speaker, they brought me a Luya dish of Ingoko Nobshuma. It's when I realized that my brothers who actually are in Zambia, who should ideally be living here in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to join myself with you in welcoming the delegation from the Republic of Southern Sudan. Mr. Speaker, I believe their presence here will go a long way to understand how our parliamentary duties are being conducted. Also at the same time, Mr. Speaker, I believe and I know, I've been to Southern Sudan myself, and we have a lot in common with the people of Southern Sudan. In fact, one of the incidences I want to say is that our flag sometimes looks almost like theirs. So I believe, Mr. Speaker, we and the people of Southern Sudan are brothers and sisters, and therefore I would like to welcome them. I hope they will enjoy their stay here as they keep learning how we conduct our activities in Parliament. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also want to join you to thank the students from Sunday Side School from Kajiado North constituency, Kajiado County, Ongatorongai division. I want to welcome you to the Senate and thank you for having time together with the teachers who have accompanied you. I want to say that you're most welcome to the Senate. You know, this is a great place that you learn more about legislature, and more so get to understand that this is the way to go. And I want to tell you that we have two delegations from Kajiado. We have Honorable Peris Tobiko, who is in the House, very honored senator who have gone through 2 terms as a member of parliament for Kajiado East. And also we have Honorable Montet, who is also in this house. He's a senator, but she's bereaved. He just passed, his husband passed on last week, and we want to say, may God bless her. Even I was there this morning. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say thank you very much for the school and for the entire county for having you here today. Thank you very much.
Honorable Senators also wish to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, a visiting delegation of staff from the Kilifi County Assembly. The staff are in the Senate, attending a training program on the proper procedures and protocols for commissioning and handling a new mess. Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. Mr. Michael B. Ngala, the Clerk, Kilifi County Assembly. Mr. Omar Chufi, Chief Sergeant at Arms. Mr. Alfred Mumba. Ms. Clara Dama. Mr. Elijah Koi. Ms. Martha Nyundo. Mr. Mwagandi Kiponda. Mr. Samson Katana. Now, honorable senators, on behalf of the Senate and my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish you a fruitful visit. Again, I'll call upon the minority leader to extend a word of welcome under 1 minute.
Asante mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, kwanza pia nataka kujiunga na wewe kuweza kuwakaribisha ndugu zetu kutoka huko nyumbani Kilifi. Na matumaini ya kwamba wale ambao wamekuja hapa kwa niaba ya ile county assembly yetu ya Kilifi wamekuja kujionea jinsia vile tunafanya mambo yetu hapa ya Senate. Vile vile Bwana Spika, natumaini ya kwamba uwepo wao hapa ni kwamba wamekuja kujifundisha mengi, na vile vile wataweza kupata kujua na kujifundisha ili wanaporudi nyumbani waweze kuendeleza bunge letu la Kilifi County tendelea namna gani ili lipate kuendelea vizuri. Mimi nataka kuchukua nafasi hii kuwakaribisha pia hawa ndugu zetu ndani ya bunge la Senate, na kwamba hapa ndipo mnapopata kila kitu ambacho mnakihitaji kule Kilifi, na nataka mkitumie kwa njia ya kisawasawa. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The Senate Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, the 11th March 2025. the environmental management and coordination, access to biological resources and benefit sharing, regulations, legal notice number 19 of 2025. The environmental management and coordination, deposit bonds, regulation, legal notice number 20 of 2025. Conclude on the environmental management and coordination, air quality amendment, regulation, legal notice number 21 of 2025. Conclude on the environmental and coordination sand harvesting amendment, regulations notice number 22 of 2025. Conclude on the environmental management and coordination water quality amendment, regulation legal notice number 23 of 2025. Conclude on the environmental management and coordination waste management amendment, regulations notice number 24 of 2025. Annual reports of the Power of Mercy Advisory Committee for the financial year 2022-2023. Report of the Office of the Control of Budget on the county government's budget implementation review for the first half of financial year 2024-2025. Reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nyandarua County Assembly, Car Loan and Mortgage Members Fund for the year ended 30 June 2024. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Murang'a Level 5 Hospital, County Government of Murang'a for the year ended 30 June 2024. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of JM Karaoke Memorial County Referral Hospital, County Government of Nakuru for the year ended 30 June 2024. I beg to lay, Mr. Speaker.
Next order, Clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statement pursuant to Standing Order 53-1. Senator from Marsabit County, Honorable Mohammed Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I have a request for statement on the construction of Sololo Level 4 Hospital. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing regarding the delayed completion of Sololo Level 4 Hospital in Marsabit County. Mr. Speaker, sir, Sololo Level 4 Hospital, located in Sololo, Marsabit County, was initially a project of the Marsabit County government. However, it was later taken over by the Kenya Defence Forces in order to facilitate its completion. Despite construction efforts spanning over 7 years, the hospital remains incomplete, raising serious concern about access to essential healthcare services in the region. Originally, it was scheduled for completion in March last year. The project has faced numerous delays with no clear communication on its progress. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide an update on the current status of the construction of Sololo Level 4 Hospital, including the hospital's total size in square meters, the percentage of works completed, pending tasks, and reasons for the prolonged delay, and the revised timeline for completion. 2, outline the original cost of the project, any cost variations over the years, indicating the total investment by the Kenya Defence Forces towards the hospital construction, whether additional funds have been allocated towards the project, and the total estimated cost to completion. And finally, 3, specify when the residents of Sololo will be able to access services from the institution. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Senator for Uasin Gishu County, the Honorable Senator Jackson Mandago.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Senator Jackson Mandago.
Honorable Senator, do you have a written authority from Senator Mandago? Could I see the text? Now, Honorable Senators, why I'm doing this is because last week, allowed a number of you to raise statements on behalf of your colleagues. And the very same colleagues came to my office complaining. So I need proof that indeed you carry instructions from your colleague. So as you look for the text, Honorable Senator Hezena, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise on a request for a statement on the exploitation of young Kenyan girls on TikTok Live. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Information, Communication and Technology regarding the recent BBC investigation exposing the exploitation of young Kenyan girls on TikTok Live. Mr. Speaker, sir, the report, which ran on 3rd of March 2025, highlights serious concerns about child safety, the failure of digital platforms to enforce age restrictions, and the increasing vulnerability of minors to online predators. Many girls are being lured into exploitative activities under the guise of digital gifting and monetization features, raising urgent questions about the effectiveness of existing protections. Without stringent safeguards, these platforms risk becoming conduits for abuse, violation not only on the rights of children, but also Kenya's legal framework for child protection. There is an urgent need for government intervention to prevent the continued exposure of minors to such harmful content and to hold all responsible parties accountable. In particular, the committee should 1. Explain any measures in place to ensure compliance with Kenya's Data Protection Act in protecting minors' personal data from exploitation on digital platforms such as TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram, and provide details on how the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner is engaging with social media companies to enforce child data privacy and the steps being taken to strengthen regulatory oversight. Second, outline the legal and technical requirements for age verification on the said platforms and assess their effectiveness in preventing underage users from accessing harmful content while outlining any ongoing discussions with digital service providers to enhance enforcement and implement stricter authentication measures for age verification. Third, describe the frameworks in place to detect, regulate, and swiftly remove exploitative content involving minors and the role of the Communications Authority of Kenya in ensuring compliance, indicating whether the government has engaged with TikTok regarding its role in enabling such exploitation and commitments made by the company to prevent recurrence. Fourth, explain the enforcement mechanisms or penalties available for digital platforms that fail to comply with Kenya's child protection regulations and interrogate how government agencies, law enforcement and child protection organizations are coordinating efforts to detect, report, and respond to online child exploitation. Last but not least, interrogate the steps being taken to improve public awareness, digital literacy, and online safety education, particularly among children and parents, and assess the effectiveness of existing reporting mechanisms for victims, parents, and the public addressing cases of online child exploitation and any planned improvement. Senator Ezena Lemaletian. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sek.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. A request for statement on administration of the Universal Service Fund, USF. Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Information, Communication and Technology regarding the administrations of the Universal Service Fund. In the statement, the committee should address the following: the accountability mechanism in place to ensure transparency in a disbursement of funds from the Universal Service Fund, USF, and to prevent mismanagement and misappropriations of funds, providing an annual breakdown of the revenue and expenditure of USF from the 2022-2023 financial year to date. 2, the alignment of the project funded by USF with Kenya long-term digital information goals and their respective impact on digital access, providing a list of all the projects undertaken from the year 2022-2023 financial year to date. To the extent of achievement of USF strategy goals, explaining why many areas across the country will remain undeserved or lack connectivity. 4, the reluctance of communication companies to expand network coverage in rural areas despite receiving tax incentive and regulatory support for the same. 5, the policy and regulatory interventions being considered to fast-track digital infrastructure deployment and to hold digital infrastructure contractors and service providers accountable for delay or substandard works. Honorable Speaker, I have the second one. Request for statement on the status of implementation of the National Digital Superhighway and the Last Mile Connectivity Project under the Universal Service Fund, USF. Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Information, Communication and Technology regarding the status of implementation of the National Digital Superhighway and the Last Mile Connectivity Project under the Universal Service Fund. In the statement, the committee should address the following: the status of implementation of the National Digital Superhighway and the Last Mile Connectivity Project under the Universal Service Fund, specifying the total kilometers of laid fiber optic cable and the number of digital village smart hubs established so far. 2, the challenges encountered in the implementation of the project and the actions taken to address them. 3, viability of public-private partnership, PPPs, in supporting the National Digital Superhighway and the Last Mile Connectivity Project, and whether the government has considered the same to supplement its efforts. 4, the measures put in place by the government to accelerate the implementation of the project for enhanced broadband access, particularly in rural and marginalized areas. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a request for a statement on behalf of Senator Jackson Mandago on the status of purchase of wheat from Kenyan farmers. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the status of purchase of wheat from Kenyan farmers. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, provide a list of all licensed wheat millers in the country. Number 2, table the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between the Cereal Growers Association and the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development regarding the purchase of local wheat by millers and the price paid per bag for the year 2024. Number 3, table a report of quantities of wheat purchased from the local farmers as well as quantities imported by each miller, explaining why the millers did not fully absorb locally produced wheat before purchasing the quotas allocated for duty-free import. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, state whether the wheat imported above the quotas attracted duty, and if not, state how much in cash equivalent the government forfeited on duty in the year 2024. Senator Raphael on behalf of Senator Jackson Mandago. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, honorable senators will make intervention on these statements for a period not exceeding 30 minutes. So if you have an opportunity to speak, keep it short. At most 3 minutes. Senator Richard Onyonka.
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to say my apologies because as I was intending to think through, Madam Kavindu was engaging me, so I'll let it pass. Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity.
Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Speaker, I was hoping that the Senator for Uasin Gishu, who I think is still the chairperson of the Committee on Health, was present in the House to listen to the statement by Senator Chute on the completion of Sololo Level 4 Hospital. Honorable Speaker, even here in Nairobi, because we have had a discussion in this committee on a facility that had been taken up under similar circumstances, Mama Margaret Kenyatta Hospital in Korogosho. It had been taken up by national government, Kenyatta National Hospital. We fought through the committee to have it handed back down to the county government of Nairobi. But ever since that happened, Honorable Speaker, thanks to the Health Committee, nothing has happened in that facility, and the people of Nairobi have not seen the benefit of returning that facility back to the county government. So I would want that when the Health Committee is dealing with the question of Sololo, they also give this House an update on where we are with operationalization and use of the facility called Mama Margaret Kenyatta Hospital in Korogosho. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Methu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And maybe even before I make a contribution on this statement that has been sought by Senator Hezena, I would want, Mr. Speaker, your guidance and clarification from yourself, Mr. Speaker, amongst the papers that were laid by the Leader of Majority. The last paper that he laid was a report of the Auditor General from the JM Karaoke Hospital. And JM Karaoke Hospital is in Nyandarua. But from the paper that was laid, it looks like JM Karaoke Hospital is a hospital in Nakuru. I think that was the last paper that, the last in the paper that was laid. So maybe that could be corrected so that the record is straight. But this statement that has been sought by Senator Hezena is a spot-on statement, Honorable Speaker. As our technology keeps growing and monetization, especially from the digital platforms, becomes a thing and an employment opportunity, especially for our young people, we must try and draw a line, a very significant line, Honorable Speaker, of protecting our children against online predators, Honorable Speaker. And I'm very happy, Honorable Speaker, that she has sought to understand how far and how much, especially the Data Commissioner of the Republic of Kenya, can be able to verify that the data that is going out, the only consumption that is going out, Honorable Speaker, is of content that is of people who can who have reached the consent age, Honorable Speaker, so that our children do not fall prey to online predators who would want to take advantage of people who cannot be able to make informed decisions and circulate content that should not be able to, that should not go out, Honorable Speaker. And I think the Committee on ICT has met in this particular statement, and more importantly, they must also establish where, because our laws will keep changing, our laws will keep making them better, because we are a law-making house, Honorable Speaker. Tell us whether there is any deficiency in terms of protecting our children against online predators, because monetization is not a very old form of employment, especially for our young people. We would want our people to continue using internet to make money. Yes, that's a very good thing. But we cannot just leave it open, Honorable Speaker, such that anybody can just upload content of a kid, and the kid is not even aware that this is content that is going out, and there is no protection, and there is no way government can be able to protect such a kid, Honorable Speaker. So the Communication Authority of Kenya must, when they appear before the committee, and I can see members of that committee, Honorable Speaker. I don't know whether Senator Osotsi is still a member of that particular committee, but I think Senator Osotsi, because your chair is not here, this is something that you must be able to understand from the Communication Authority of Kenya.
Give the senator 1 minute.
Whether they have the guidelines that they are using, especially on TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter, so that they can be able to protect the content that is going out, such that the child protection framework is there so that you can protect our children. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to comment on two statements, one by Senator Hezena on data protection rights, and another one by Senator Seki on ICT development in this country. Mr. Speaker, I participated in developing the Data Protection Act, which Senator Hezena was referring to. But I want to say the challenge we are having with the Office of Data Protection Commissioner is because the act has not been properly and effectively implemented. And I think that is a matter that should be looked into deeply by the ICT committee that will be looking into this matter. And Mr. Speaker, I think one of the things I have observed, I'm no longer in the ICT committee, Mr. Speaker, because I was very frustrated as a member of the ICT committee, given that my background is in the ICT sector. Everyone in this ministry is clueless, Mr. Speaker. And that one I have to say, starting from the Communication Authority to the ministry, everywhere, the ICT Authority, and I think we cannot develop in terms of ICT if we have people who are running this ministry or sectors in this ministry who do not understand technology itself. Mr. Speaker, Communication Authority, for instance, is headed by a journalist. Ministry of ICT is headed by people who have no clue on ICT. I think that's the starting point, Mr. Speaker. We saw this country made strides in ICT when Bitange Ndemo was in charge of that ministry. I think it's a high time we have to place people who are qualified, who are experienced in the sector, to run the institution under ICT. Because if you listen to the two questions the members have asked, and from my understanding of the ministry, there is a serious competence issue in this ministry, Mr. Speaker. When we talk about matters of Office of the Data Protection Commission, I mean, Mr. Speaker, we have a tendency of giving all the jobs to lawyers. We give all the jobs to lawyers, even jobs which require technical input. The Office of the Data Protection Commissioner should ideally be someone who understands technology, ICT, not a lawyer. That is the problem. If you look at CA performed its role better when this gentleman, I've forgotten the name, Wangusi, was in charge.
Give the Honorable Senator a minute to conclude his remarks.
Mr. Speaker, a journalist cannot understand detailed information. He cannot understand spectrum management. He cannot understand issues of transmission of signals and all that stuff. I think it's a high time the appointing authority looked deeply into this ministry so that we have the relevant people to be in charge of the sectors in this ministry and even the parent ministry so that we deliver the technology to the people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to associate myself with the statement by Senator Hezena and Senator Seki, and I ask the ICT committee, which, Mr. Speaker, I left ICT committee because that committee is on the verge of death because of leadership. And I thought the majority leader will do better by getting the right leadership to lead that committee, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important committee that we require strong leadership so that we deliver for the people.
Senator Methu?
Mr. Speaker, the deputy party leader of ODM has made a very serious allegation against the committee of this House. And statement of fact, may I know, because he has been a member. You see, when an alligator leaves the river and tells you that the crocodile is sick, you must listen to the alligator. I want to know why the senator also would actually say that the committee on ICT is at the verge of death, whereas the chairman of that committee, even when the committees were disbanded, he has been reinstated and has been reinstated on merit, because I was de-whipped on demerit. So I think he has been reinstated on merit. So I would want to know from Senator Osotsi why he would want to make such a serious allegation, and what proof he would have to that effect.
Senator Osotsi. Mr. Speaker, Senator Osotsi, just take your seat. Senator Osotsi, all the senators elected and nominated, as far as placing them in committees or leadership positions, they're equal. And no individual senator can discuss the competence or otherwise of the other. And you're fully aware that you cannot discuss, because that borders on discussing the conduct of a colleague. And that is out of order. So kindly refrain from that line of an argument and conclude your remarks.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize to that extent, but Senator Methu brought a statement before the ICT committee on a very important matter of drop calls. And that statement was not given the maximum justice it needed. And it actually disappeared in thin air. So you have an answer on that matter already, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go and discuss the competence of the leadership of that committee, but I was just trying to emphasize that if we have a scenario where there is people who are in leadership, in the agencies, in ICT, the ministry, and even the committee, then we will not be able to pursue the development that we need in this sector, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue raised by the Senator of Marsabit, Said Mohammed Chute, is very important. It speaks to a pandemic in this country, Mr. Speaker, where projects started by the first generation governors have stalled. The project at hand, the hospital in Sololo, Mr. Speaker, for 7 years, it's just lying there. If you go to Kakamega, Shemahubu is just lying there for 10 years. In Kakamega Referral Hospital, for 10 years, it is just lying there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in fact, this thing is cross-cutting, and we should look for a national solution. Mr. Speaker, it is very sad that Kenyans have to come from as low down as Isiolo to go and seek for medical treatment in Ethiopia because of this kind of nonsense. And the Auditor General, the Control of Budget, have spoken to all this. In fact, as late as last week, Mr. Speaker, there was a release from Control of Budget which showed the following: that billions of shillings have gone down the drain in stalled projects. And number one on the list is Kakamega County with 7.24 billion shillings gone. Followed, Mr. Speaker, by Uasin County with 1.76 billion shillings down the drain gone. Followed by Machakos County with 1.13 billion shillings, followed by Nyandarua, 681.7 million, and Tarakanidhi. Of all counties, a small county called Tarakanidhi, they have been able to lose 525.29 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have to address this, because the same governors who are sitting on this loss of public funds, Mr. Speaker, if you saw the lifestyle those guys lead, Mr. Speaker, may God help me never to lead such a deceitful life, because they don't need it. Mr. Speaker, the kind of properties they have here in Nairobi, and they have even developed the art of theft. They are now investing in South Africa and Dubai, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this House must do something. The MCS have tried. They have brought us motions of impeachment. What is this silver bullet we can release on these characters so that the people of Kakamega can have somebody recover for them 7.2 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker?
It's 1 minute for the senator to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I cry for many, and the country will need patriots who will speak truth to power. Mr. Speaker, I was recently in a parliamentary committee, it's called PG meeting, and governors were there, senators were there, and MPs were there. And they were drinking tea and feeling very happy, and they see nothing wrong, Mr. Speaker, in 10 billion shillings being held in the road maintenance levy because MPs and governors are fighting. In that same PG, why can't they agree amongst themselves that withdraw this thing from court so that members of the public can start enjoying 10 billion shillings? We are a lie. As a leadership of this country, we are a lie to wananchi. When we meet, we don't talk about wananchi's issues. We talk about our own issues. Mr. Speaker, the collective mind of the nation must now wake up. We cannot go on like this. I mean, that is not why I came to Nairobi. If I want money, I can get it in Kakamega. In fact, I successfully settled all my marriages just by being in Kakamega. There's nothing special in Nairobi. We came to Nairobi for matters of governance. And this is the crux of the matter. Senator Chute, we're with you. I know the story of Marsabit and Turkana, a county where children stop you on the road, not for money. They ask you water. And when you give the child, a little boy of 5 years, a bottle of water, the face lights up, Mr. Speaker. We are living a lie.
Senator Eddie.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I think that I wanted to just give a few thoughts on the good statements out by Senator Ezena on TikTok usage and data protection. Mr. Speaker, I know that we do have a Kenya Data Protection Act in place. impact assessment, and then look at the interface between that impact assessment together with the governance policies and how clear they can be. For instance, Mr. Speaker, despite the existence of that particular law, there is no transparency, Mr. Speaker, on data collection, data storage, and data usage, not only by TikTok, but by other social media platforms that we have. Today, if you look at Meta platforms like IG, you can't really be able to pinpoint where the transparency is in terms of collection, storage, and waste and usage, Mr. Speaker. There are also no transparency on processing activities of this data that we are seeing massive young people and even older people getting on this platform, Mr. Speaker. And you can actually further look at it in terms of transfer of that data from within and without Kenya. Within Kenya, perhaps you can be able to force TikTok and other platforms, Mr. Speaker, to comply with the generic laws in the Kenya Data Protection Act. But what happens when that data is transferred outside? Does it meet the data protection safeguards outside this country? And what is the compliance metrics that our data protection organizations and government institutions have to make sure that this kind of platforms comply to the safeguards that are established within China, are established within the US, are established within Ireland? This is something that must be looked at from an impact assessment perspective, Mr. Speaker. But then when you look at countries that have made strides, Mr. Speaker, like the US, they have data localization, Mr. Speaker, that there's some form of data that cannot be transferred outside their border and then be exploited more broadly, as we see with young people in this country. That also goes with things like content moderation, Mr. Speaker, standards. Despite the fact that people like TikTok have got what I would call industrial policy or company policies that we can buttress on, Mr. Speaker, on issue of data protection, there isn't really a way of being able to incorporate Kenyan cultural
Senator Kavindu. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the protection. There isn't really a way that you can be able to incorporate things like Kenyan cultural and moral standards, despite the fact that people like TikTok and IG do appreciate the regional ideologies, regional cultures, Mr. Speaker. The current form of law that we have does not reduce to policy where you can be able to actually force them to comply with that notion of regional cultural and moral standards, because that is where content generations become a bigger problem. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, to further make this work for our younger generation, if you think about people who are under the age of 13, there has to be a required user education on our public sphere, Mr. Speaker, that is required of the corporate companies that are running these platforms, to the extent that that user education can also be able to help buttress some of the standards that TikTok, Facebook, IG, and any other social media platform that will come in future can be able to give to our young people. So I would request that this committee takes this work seriously and be able to promote.
Senator Essie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to support the statement by Senator Mandago on the status of wheat farmers in this country. Mr. Speaker, I have seen the Agriculture and Food Authority run an ad of better kilimo mkulima kwanza. And as a country, we are constantly preaching buy Kenya, build Kenya. Mr. Speaker, those remain mere words. If our wheat farmers can actually not have their wheat purchased from them, and instead we are opting for more imports which are flooding the market, Mr. Speaker, and I hope this will not be a game of the goose, just like when we were investigating the edible oil scandal. So, Mr. Speaker, I want the committee to go deep into this, because there is no way we are prioritizing importation, and Kenya as a country is producing huge quantities of wheat and want to discourage our farmers for that matter. Then in this case, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, I would use the Swahili word, kinaya kikubwa, that the Agriculture and Food Authority and the ministry in general is running an ad of better kilimo mkulima kwanza, but prioritizing people who are not our citizens in this country. So I want the committee to really go down into that, go beyond some of the issues Senator Mandago has raised, so that there is justice for our farmers who are actually
involving themselves into issues of farming. Mr. Speaker, I also want to support the statement by Senator Hezena. It is a wake-up call to parents, guardians, to also guide our children who are growing up on what is suitable for their consumption, so that in as much as we are going to put laws that want to actually guide them on what to look at and what not to look at, we as parents need to have that as a responsibility so that we are bringing up children who are well informed. And that's why I brought the civic education bill, not just for we members here, but citizens in general to be informed on what decisions they are bound to make. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 8, motion, report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries on a petition to the Senate regarding the catastrophic maize diseases that farmers in Bomet County have endured for the last 12 years. Resumption of debate, question to be put.
So, Honorable Senators, debate on this motion had been concluded. What remains is for the chair to put the question, which I hereby proceed to do. That the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries on a petition to the Senate regarding the catastrophic maize diseases the farmers in Bomet County have endured for the last 12 years, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 5th of December, 2024. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries on a petition to the Senate regarding graft investigation by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, on the West Kano irrigation scheme. Resumption of debate for the question to be put.
Again, motion on this particular debate on this motion had been concluded. It's a matter that does not touch specifically on counties, and therefore what remains again is for me to put the question, which I will now proceed to do. That the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries on a petition to the Senate regarding graft investigation by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, on the West Kano irrigation scheme, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 5th of December, 2024. Will as many as of that opinion say yes? Aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, the Public Fundraising Appeals Bill, Senate Bills number 36 of 2024, second reading division.
Now, Honorable Senators, will defer order number 11 all the way to 13 and proceed from order number 14. Clerk, proceed to call that order, please.
Order number 14, motion, report of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on an inquiry into the welfare of workers at the export processing zones in Mombasa and Kilifi counties. Resumption of debate.
Now, for clarity, Honorable Senators, we have deferred order number 10 all the way to order number 13. Now, for order number 14, when debate was interrupted, Senator Eddy had the floor and he had a balance of 14 minutes. He's not in, so we will proceed to allow any senator wishing to make their comments on this particular motion. From my dashboard, I don't see any indication. That's 14. Now, honorable senators, clearly there's no indication from any honorable senators wishing to speak, and therefore I will allow the mover of this motion to proceed to reply. Senator Murgo.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
You already moved. What you need to do right now is to reply.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I rise to thank everybody, the Committee of Labour.
Senator Seki, kindly take your seat.
And
Senator.
also the members that contributed to this motion, even though it was brief, but I thank them anyhow, and so I beg to reply.
Clerk, do you have the necessary quorum to enable me to put the question? Thank you. Honorable senators will now proceed to put the question. That the Senate adopt the report of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on an inquiry into the plight of workers in the export processing zones, EPZs, in Mombasa and Kilifi counties, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 1st of October 2024. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 15, motion, consideration of the joint report of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs and the Senate Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on its consideration of the report of the National Dialogue Committee, NADCO, and the report of the Multisectoral Working Group on the realization of the two-thirds gender principle.
The chairperson, JLUC. We will defer that particular order. Clerk, call the next order, please.
Order number 16, the Heritage and Museums Bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2023, second reading.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. You may proceed to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Moving the Heritage and Museum Bill 2023, Senate Bill number 8 of 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the Heritage and Museum Bill 2023 to be read the second time. The bill was published on 28th February 2023 and read first time in the Senate on 22 March 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, the paragraph 25 of part 1 of the fourth schedule to the Constitution designates ancient and historical monuments of national importance as part of the functions of the national government. Paragraph 4 of page 2 of the fourth schedule to the Constitution states that cultural activities, public entertainment, and public amenities include museums and a function of the county governments. The principal object of the bill is therefore to repeal the National Museum and Heritage and enact a new bill that conforms to the Constitution. The bill proposes, 1, to retain the National Museum of Kenya already established under the National Museums and Heritage Act 2006, provide for national and county museums, 3, provide for the preservation and protection and management of cultural and...
What is your point of order, Senator for Kitui? Just take your seat, Senator Mogo.
Speaker, I would not have wanted to interrupt the member as he moved the motion. Speaker, our standing order number 95 prohibits us explicitly, the Speaker, that when moving and making a debate on the floor, we should not be seen to be reading word by word the things that we are saying. The Speaker, is the member in order, unless you are satisfied, the Speaker, that he should read the moving of the bill, is he in order, the Speaker, to read word for word as he moves the motion?
I think in order that the honorable member gives us in precision the imports and the purpose of this particular motion, I will allow him to read pursuant to Standing Order 95-2. Proceed, Honorable Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, sir, after the brief background, I now move to the content of the bill. Overview of the bill. The bill legislative proposal 1, retain the National Museum of Kenya. 2, provide the functions of counties in relation to heritage and museums, and then establish county museums in their functions. Provide for an appointment county heritage inspectors in each county for the purpose of compliance with the bill. Provide for the establishment of national heritage centers in each county. Provides for the maintenance of registers of all protected areas and ancient and historical monuments of national importance, and provide for the enforcement of agreements for protection of monuments, and finally establish the Heritage Tribunal to hear appeals and complaints and resolve conflicts and address all issues relating to heritage and museums. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill provides for all re-establishment of national museums of Kenya vested with the mandate of conserving and cultural and natural heritage of national importance. The management of National Museum of Kenya is vested in the Board of National Museums. The Director General shall be responsible for the day-to-day and management and general administration of the National Museums of Kenya, subject to the board's direction. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill provides also for the functions of the county government pertaining the county museums. In relation to the museums, and the government will have the mandate of collection and documentation of exhibition of materials, objects of historical and cultural heritage that are important to the respective county. The bill empowers the Cabinet Secretary responsible for the matters relating to the national heritage and antiques and monuments after consulting with the National Museums Board to declare and gazette places and objects of heritage of national importance. The board is mandated to deliberate and pass a resolution on degazettements of places or objects of national heritage. The bill further provides for the prescription of the general principles for the management of heritage resources nationally by registration. Mr. Speaker, sir, under the bill, it is mandatory to obtain an exploration license before pursuing excavation of or before each operations for the burial for the buried monuments. The bill prescribes the procedure of operation in the case of dispenses of rights of occupation of trust land or manage any such land of occupiers of claims compensation. Under the bill, the National Museums of Kenya must notify of the discovery made. The bill also restricts the movement of objects of architectural or paleontological interests without authorization. The bill provides for protected areas and ways of compensation of owners of land declare to be a protected area. The Cabinet Secretary is empowered to prohibit or to restrict access to any development or use of protected area for agricultural or livestock or activity which would damage monument or objects of the archaeological interests. Mr. Speaker, the bill provides for the acquisition, protection, maintenance, inspection, repair, acquisition, and guaranteeship of monuments. The use of the bill, under the bill, the antiques are considered property of the government. Removal of antiques and protected objects from place where such situated is prohibited and under the bill. The bill prohibits also the sale of antiques and protected objects. The bill provides the condition relating to export of monuments, antiques, or protected objects. The bill provides that monuments, antiques, or protected objects shall not be removed from Kenya otherwise than thorough customs part of entry. The bill provides an enforced mechanism by the National Museums of Kenya to ensure compliance with the provisions of the proposed act. The bill provides for the inspection by the National Museums for the appointment of national heritage inspectors for the purpose of enforcing the act. The National Heritage Inspector has been given power to inspect, to arrest, to search under the bill. The bill also provides for the establishment of heritage tribunal which shall hear appeals and complaints, resolve conflicts, and address questions under the bill. Mr. Speaker, the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare held public participation on the bill on 20th April 2023 and received submissions from the following stakeholders: the county government, the Council of County Government, the National Museums of Kenya, Nature Kenya, Attorney General, and Turkana Basin Institute. The Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare tabled the report on the consideration of the bill. The bill will provide a legal framework for the implementation of functions and powers of the county government, which with respect to the cultural activities public entertainment and public amenities as set out under paragraph 4 of page 2 of the fourth schedule to the Constitution. The bill will also repeal the National Museums and Heritage Act 2006. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish those few, Mr. Speaker, sir, I with those few comments, move the Heritage and Museum Bill, Senate Bill number 8 of 2023, now be read a second time. I beg to move.
Who is your seconder?
May I ask Senator Faki Mohammed to second?
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuunga mkono mswada wa makavazi na utamaduni ambao ni mswada wa bunge la Senate na ambao umewasilishwa bungeni na mwenyekiti wa kamati ya leba na huduma za jamii za bunge la Senate. Mheshimiwa Spika, niliwahi kuhudumu katika kamati hii kwa muda wa miaka 2.5 iliyopita. Kwa hivyo nimeweza soma mswada huu na vile vile pia kuona kwamba yale mambo ambayo yanazungumziwa yatasaidia pakubwa kuweza kinga na kuweza kuhifadhi utamaduni na mila zetu katika nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza ni kwamba mambo ya utamaduni na makavazi ni mambo ambayo yamegatuliwa kulingana na ibara ya 4 ya katiba yetu, yani 4th schedule. Na ule mswada ambao kwa sasa uko ni sheria, mswada wa makavazi na utamaduni wa mwaka 2006 kwa sasa umepitwa na wakati, kwa sababu kulingana na katiba mpya tuko katika himaya ya serikali mbili, serikali ya kitaifa na serikali za ugatuzi. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, inatakana mswada huu uweze kuangalia sehemu zote mbili, serikali za ugatuzi na vile vile pia serikali ya kitaifa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kaunti zetu nyingi mpaka sasa hazijaweza kutenga fedha za kutosha kuhakikisha kwamba wanasimamia makavazi tofauti katika maeneo yao na vile vile pia kusimamia mambo ya mila na tamaduni katika maeneo ambao wanatoka. Kwa mfano Mheshimiwa Spika, katika kaunti ya Mombasa hatujaona bajeti yoyote ama mradi wowote wa makavazi katika eneo hili ambao unasimamiwa na kaunti zetu. Tukiangalia sehemu zingine kama kaunti ya Kilifi, kuna kaya zetu zile ambazo watu walikuwa wakienda kwa muda mrefu wakiomba Mungu na vile vile pia kufanya matambiko yao ya kitamaduni, kwa sababu fedha ambazo ziko Mheshimiwa Spika ni kidogo, na vile vile pia sheria kulikuwa hakuna ambayo inaweza kusimamia mambo kama hayo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mswada huu utasaidia pakubwa kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba serikali zetu za kaunti zinaweza kuangalia swala hili ambalo ni muhimu katika maisha ya binadamu. Mheshimiwa Spika, vile vile katika usimamizi wa makavazi, Mheshimiwa Spika, utapata kwamba kama Mombasa, zile sehemu zote ambazo ni za kihistoria, kwa mfano Fort Jesus, makavazi ya Fort Jesus, vile vile Mama Ngina Waterfront, ambayo ilikarabatiwa majuzi, ilijengwa upya majuzi na serikali kuu, wamekatalia kutoa hati miliki, Mheshimiwa Spika, ya makavazi yao kwa kaunti ya Mombasa. Mara ya mwisho waziri alipokuja hapa, Waziri Miano alisema kwamba atakwenda ataliangalia swala hilo, lakini juzi nilipomuuliza aliniambia kwamba swala hilo sasa limetolewa, yani masuala ya utamaduni, yani heritage, yametolewa kutoka kwa Wizara ya Utalii na Wanyamapori, imepelekwa katika ofisi ya Wizara ya Jenda na mambo mengine ya vijana. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono mswada huu na nafikiri ukipitishwa utasaidia pakubwa serikali zetu za ugatuzi kuhakikisha kwamba wanachangia pakubwa kuweza kuhifadhi na kujenga turathi zetu na vile vile pia makavazi yetu ya awali. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Honorable Senators, I'll now proceed to propose the question that the Heritage and Museums Bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2023, be now read a second time. The floor is now open. Honorable Senator Emma. Maybe before you take to the floor, Honorable Senator, allow me to make this communication. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting students and teachers from Moi Forces Academy, Nairobi County. The delegation comprises of 140 students and 7 teachers who are undertaking a study tour to the Senate. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to them and wish them all the very best during their visit. I will allow the Senator for Kitui to, under 1 minute, to extend a word of welcome and thereafter proceed to make your comments on the bill.
Thank you, the Speaker. The Speaker, I want to join you, and on behalf of the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, do wish to extend a word of welcome to the visiting students from Moi Forces Academy, Nairobi County. I want to wish them, the Speaker, as you have done, a fruitful visit as they follow the proceedings in the Senate, that some of them, if not all of them, will be inspired and aspire one day to join this great house to legislate, represent, and oversight on behalf of the Kenyan people. The students and their teachers, I say welcome. Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the bill ably moved by the chairman of Labour, the Senator Murgo, on the Heritage and Museums Bill 2023. Speaker, initially I had my own reservations about the bill, but I have consulted the Secretariat and have been properly guided that in fact what a part of this bill seeks to do is to repeal the existing National Museums and Heritage Act of 2006. Because I was wondering, now this bill seeks to establish a national museum, and all my life I've always known that we have had a national museum. In fact, the Speaker, it will be remembered that my predecessor, the former senator of Kitui County, Honorable David Musila, has been serving as the chairman of the National Museum. And so when I saw this, I was wondering then, what was Senator Musila serving in? But now I'm properly guiding the Speaker. The bill also seeks to repeal the National Museums and Heritage Act established in 2006. And for a good reason, Mr. Speaker. The move to repeal the 2006 Act could not come at a better time. In fact, if you ask me, the Speaker, it's long overdue. Because when this act was passed in 2006, Mr. Speaker, we were operating under a different constitutional dispensation. But after the promulgation of the 2010 new constitutional order, then the Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the fourth schedule, part 1, allocates museums, historical monuments of national importance to the national government. So it's a national government function, but we also know, Mr. Speaker, that this is a national government function with a lot of work to be done in the counties. And so there was need to create that synergy between the management of museums at the national level and the operationalization of what goes in museums, Mr. Speaker, at county levels. Mr. Speaker, I am impressed by the provisions of part 2 of the museum, of the Arch of the Speaker, which I think for the first time and in a very nice way makes every citizen a trustee of our national heritage. That the Speaker, if or is it when this bill becomes law, it will be the responsibility of every citizen of this country to act responsibly in the preservation and protection of our heritage. The Speaker, I think that has been captured very well in the bill, and I'm in support of it, Mr. Speaker, so that it is not us waiting for other people seated in other offices to protect our heritage, but it is now incumbent upon every Kenyan to act responsibly and ensure that we protect our heritage for the benefit of this current generation and for future generations. Mr. Speaker, I see that the bill assigns roles and responsibilities to the 2 levels of government in part 3, and I am happy with the roles assigned to county governments. Mr. Speaker, where we all come from in our counties, we have artifacts, we have monuments, we have indigenous cultures that are at a threat, Mr. Speaker, of getting extinct. Why? Because as things stand now, it is the responsibility of the national government to make sure that these cultures, indigenous cultures, heritages, monuments in our respective counties are preserved and taken care of. Now, with the passage of this bill, the responsibility is taken where it belongs. That now county governments will also now have to even pass budgets to support their own indigenous cultures, their own monuments, their own artifacts. Mr. Speaker, this is a move in the right direction to ensure that even when it comes to the promotion of our diversity, then counties that share almost similar or even complementing heritages, then they would be able to come up with consortiums to even establish circuits for tourism crisscrossing counties. Mr. Speaker, while speaking about establishment of those circuits for purposes of tourist attractions, Mr. Speaker, yours truly is in the process of bringing to the floor of this House a bill that seeks to establish and entrench regional authorities or regional county regional caucuses to ensure that these economic blocks in the counties then operate within a structure that is recognized by law. Mr. Speaker, this will go a long way in ensuring then that counties have no problems with budgeting for cross-county operations. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to ensure that the National Museums of Kenya, now repealed, the act is now repealed by the passage, when we pass this bill, that they should be able to identify, acquire, and record ancient and historical and monuments and sites in conjunction with county governments. So that, Mr. Speaker, I will expect that with the passage of this bill, then one of the things that is going to happen is that now there will be a lot of consultation between the National Museums of Kenya, established and operating with its headquarters in Nairobi, and the satellite offices set up in counties to ensure that then there's synergy, that the establishment and identification of monuments and heritages and historical sites, Mr. Speaker, is done smoothly. There are things, Mr. Speaker, that people sitting in Nairobi may not think that they have a lot of value in terms of heritage. But for the people living in those respective counties, those heritages carry a lot of weight in passing their cultures from one generation to the next generation. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I wish to support the bill and hope that, Mr. Speaker, once this bill is passed by both houses of Parliament, then it's going to help us in ensuring, Mr. Speaker, that our heritage is protected, to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, counties also continue to play the right role in ensuring that we don't lose our cultures, we don't lose our heritage. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I support.
Senator Veronica Maina.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important bill that has been brought to the floor of this House. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate the chair of the Labour Committee, Senator Mulgo, for bringing a genius legislation that can be a great avenue, even of income for the counties, Honorable Speaker. The Heritage and Museum Bill. And Honorable Speaker, and before I tackle any other section, I'll jump into section 93 of this bill, proposed legislation, that talks about the National Museum now being empowered to enable a request to be filed to courts and other competent jurisdiction to order for the return of cultural objects that were illegally exported from the territory of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, we know very well, before our community and our nation was alert as to the value of some of these artifacts and some of these monuments, architectural works, sculptures, those who were more aware and who came from other jurisdictions of our nation, Honorable Speaker, carted away very important artifacts that are now showcased in other very modern museums and whose value has become very high, Honorable Speaker. I am very pleased as a senator to see that we can finally legislate a piece of law that can help us to extradite or return all those artifacts back to this country, Honorable Speaker. That means it's a very progressive legislation, Honorable Speaker. I have seen for the first time that counties have been recognized as a platform where museums can now be created at county level and where heritage, artifacts, culture can be preserved right at the county level. That means it has gone down to the people. And every county now must take ownership of this legislation. Why, Honorable Speaker? For a long time, I have seen Kenyans trying to express themselves, their culture, their tribe, their ethnic background, and sometimes it has not come out positively because it's been used to divide people. We now have a legislation where culture can be expressed in a positive way. culture differences can be expressed through establishment of museums at county level, where when a young person visits, if a young Kenyan from diaspora visits Murang'a County, they can tell how the Kikuyu community lived from before 1900, using the concept of a museum that has preserved the culture and the livelihoods of a people. So, Honorable Speaker, I would hope when this legislation is finally enacted, that counties will take advantage of it. And I want to remember when Senate went to Turkana County, Mashinani, Turkana, Senate Mashinani was in Turkana County. I watched the kind of dances that were presented, read the history of those traditional dances, looked at the attire that was being used by the Turkana people, and for a moment, my heart was captivated, especially by the outfits, Honorable Speaker, because those outfits, if they are not preserved within the context of such a legislation, in another 20, 30 years, they will be replaced by the modern clothing, and we will no longer remember how Turkana culture looked like or how the dances were being done. So, Honorable Speaker, this legislation is a legislation which the Council of Governors should take and ensure that it is implemented to the letter within the county context, Honorable Speaker. And I'm also seeing Senator Ledama has gotten back to his seat in the House, and I'm thinking about the very rich Maasai heritage and culture that has defined and given a brand to the nation of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, we want to see the Narok County, we want to see Kajiado County, and all the counties around Maasai land, ensuring that every beadwork that has been done by the Maasai, handmade beadworks, the artifacts we have seen, the shield, the spears that the Maasais use, the rungu that the Maasais use. Even sometimes I see Senator Ledama adorning that rungu, but for the hashai that comes from the sergeant at arms at Senate, that is not been allowed to bring it to the Senate, Honorable Speaker. But we want to see all those artifacts settled in certain very good museums in Narok County, Kajiado County, so that when we are promoting our tourism, we can tell the world that they can come to Kenya and learn exactly how the Maasais have lived for the last 100 years, Honorable Speaker, on a platform on very good museums. I am thinking of some of the museums I have visited across the world as I have had opportunity to travel. And I'm thinking of a museum like Madame Tussauds Museum in UK, in London. Honorable Speaker, if you visit this Madame Tussauds Museum, you will be amazed to see the kind of artifacts they have put in that museum and the kind of income that is being earned through the use of that museum. You will find the likes of the former president of United States of America, Barack Obama, together with the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, very well sculptured there within the Madame Tussauds. You can read the history of the whole of UK and Britain. Following that museum, every year they will show you who was the king in 1895, who moved on to 1900, Honorable Speaker. And if we were to take this concept of museum with the dedication that it should be handled, Honorable Speaker, we would have even visitors streaming in. And we must think of artifacts that have been preserved in other jurisdictions like the Egypt, where the pyramids, people travel, millions of tourists flock Egypt and Cairo to see the pyramids, Honorable Speaker. So we want to see that Fort Jesus gets the kind of branding, the kind of marketing, the kind of know-how that people should have about the Fort Jesus and what it stood for the nation of Kenya. We want to see the Lamu doors, which I see have been preserved and have been recognized here, that any wooden frames and doors that date beyond 1946 should also be identified as artifacts that need preservation. And that artifact, Honorable Speaker, could even be like what you're seeing here in Senate, the art that has been used around the Senate building itself, This is art that is not of today. It's of those years, Honorable Speaker. And we want to see this artifact, Honorable Speaker, preserved so that when our children are born in another 50, 60 years, this legislation will mean something to them and will not only be there to just be viewed and to give the history, it will also be there to earn income for our nation, Honorable Speaker. You know, we have had a heavy tussle with the Council of Governors and Governors when we come to the issue of discussing own source revenue. This is one of the innovative ways that counties can earn revenue and can attract tourism. When I go to Murang'a County, Honorable Speaker, just the other day we had a very big Kyondo event. The basket that is weaved by the older generation, the age of our mothers, who are bringing up a certain art which we do not have ourselves. We don't have that craft ourselves, Honorable Speaker. We want to see the preservation of such, those baskets being preserved within a museum so that even as that skill is developed, as that skill is evolving, as that skill is changing, we can actually see that the museum has preserved and has shown us what pots were being used in Kenya in 1900, Honorable Speaker. You know, sometimes legislation can be done here, and because it's being presented in very fine English, people may tend to think it is something that is beyond our understanding. It is just a preservation of those items that were used in the kitchens, Honorable Speaker, from 1900 up to 1910 to 2000. What is the development? How have they evolved, Honorable Speaker? And I'm thinking of a small museum in Karen right now, Karen Blixen, where when you tour the house where Karen Blixen, who was one of those first British occupants into Kenya and in Karen area, and the whole of Karen is named after Karen Blixen, you will be shown just the bed where Karen lived, where Karen cooked, where Karen had dinner. It is just those artifacts put together, and you are then able to be shown. A curtain is raised, and you are able to view how life was, how the outfits were. When they went for dinner, what did they wear? That is all that is preserved in that museum. And Honorable Speaker, you know, even the Karen Blixen, they are able to raise some funds even as they retain that museum. Honorable Speaker, when I remember one of the museums I visited in UK, there is a small museum of a Christian who lived in UK and who wrote this song, Amazing Grace. They have created a whole museum around that song, and out of that museum concept, they have also come up with very interesting paraphernalia, Honorable Speaker, and gifts that can be sold, and that shows how the song Amazing Grace was composed and how it got into our Christian world and into our worship, Honorable Speaker. So I want to highly commend the committee for coming up with such a legislation, and I believe that our national heritage will be safer, Honorable Speaker, when we get hold of this artifact. I have also noted, Honorable Speaker, one of the items that has been recognized as requiring preservation are those vessels which may have sunk or vessels that predate 1940s. If they are found anywhere by our shores or they are recovered anywhere, then, Honorable Speaker, they are also supposed to be preserved for museum purposes and also for learning and also for ensuring that we can see how the technology of yesteryears has been developed up to now, Honorable Speaker. I believe if we implement this very well, the Heritage and Museums Bill, once it turns into law, if we implement it very well, Honorable Speaker, then it's going to support, it will be a framework that will support research in the fields of ancient, historical, scientific, cultural, natural, technological, and human interests, Honorable Speaker. And it will help Kenya to attract many more historians as they visit the country which is the cradle of mankind, and that is the Republic of Kenya. With this legislation, Honorable Speaker, and with its implementation, we should be able to attract more scientists, more researchers, more historians, even more academies, Honorable Speaker, more universities which are doing research or institutes that are interested in research. I highly commend the enactment of this Heritage and Museum Bill and pray and ask all the senators to support this bill until it turns into law that can transform our counties and that can also help us preserve the culture and the heritage, our rich heritage as Kenyans and as Africans. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Olekina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this timely bill, the National Heritage of Museum Bill 2023. Mr. Speaker, as I support this bill, I just want to note one thing, that it's about time that we all appreciate our diversity, respect each culture, and not subject any culture to second grading. One of the most offensive things in this bill, Mr. Speaker, is that the committee decided that counties will only grade the artifacts that they find in that county as grade 2. Yet the National Museum, or rather the umbrella body with the Director General, will be given the opportunity to grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd like to persuade the Committee of Labor, I believe led by my good friend, Senator Murgor, to do away with the grading aspect of it completely. If you read Section 4, the National Museum of Kenya shall, in consultation with the Cabinet Secretary and the County Executive Committee, member in each county prescribe a system of grading of places and objects which form part of the national heritage and shall distinguish between grade 1, 2, and 3. I want to persuade the distinguished senator to do away with that aspect. Because how? Who gives you the audacity to be able to come and say that what I consider to be valuable in the Maasai community is now going to be subjected into a second class by a cabinet secretary and an executive committee member of a county government who does not even understand that heritage? Mr. Speaker, I would like to persuade directly the good distinguished senator to do away with that. The other part which I thought was wrong, Mr. Speaker, is on number 8. The function of county government shall be to C, identify and maintain and manage of grade 2 heritage resources in accordance with this act. Mr. Speaker, the reason why I find that provision to be wrongly placed is because the colonial masters came into this country. They took everything that belonged to us, everything that was important to us. If you go to London, in the museums in London today, Mr. Speaker, you will find Maasai artifacts which are there, which have serious cultural significance to us. But they were all taken to London, where everyone goes in there, they get tickets, and they actually get money. Now, when we have devolved resources in this country, when we have decided now to set up museums across this country, we still subject ourselves to that colonial mentality of taking what is so important to the bullfighter from Kakamega to Nairobi. Why not send people from Nairobi to Kakamega to be able to go and see what is important there? So I really would like to persuade you to completely do away with that system of grading. Who gives the cabinet secretary the knowledge of my culture? Does not understand. Who gives the CC committee member, who is a political appointee, the ability to be able to distinguish what is good and what is wrong? Mr. Speaker, my community, the Maasai community, traded with traders from the Czech Republic who brought in beads. The beads that we wear were traded between the Maasais and traders from the Czech Republic, from the European community. Until today, the algorithm, 99% of all the beads which are sold in this country come from Czech Republic. And when you try to get them from a different country, there are challenges because there was a particular channel which they passed through. So we adapted them, but we have others. which are very significant to us. The Pokot have their heritage. The Njems, or Chamus community, who are our sister tribe, have what they value. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the Ateker community, which is a community that I belong to, the Ateker are the Masais, the Samburu, the Karamajong, the Pokot, the Ethiopians, people from Ethiopia, from South Sudan. We have our heritage, which we have preserved for years. It is upon us. And the only thing that I support with this is that county governments must now set up a particular percentage of their budget to be able to set up museums that will attract people into those counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the challenge we have at the moment is that because of this cosmopolitan nature, some of us are afraid that our own counties will be strangers, will be people who will be put in museums. Mr. Speaker, I went to a place in Austria, in a place called Salzburg. And when I got to Salzburg, they have a beautiful museum. And in that museum, they have a short African man like this, who they say this was a human whom we brought from South Africa many years ago. I don't want the Maasai to be put there and they say, you see that lanky fellow? That fellow is from the Maasai community who used to be predominant in this county. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, the other day I was saying, we now need to be creative in this house. We need to be able to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to solve this conflict in borders? You'll find the Maasais, the Kisis, and the Luos are fighting their borders because of land issues. That's why I said, let us change the law on land so that where we know this is where the Maasai reach, the Maasais who live in that place are told, for the sake of preserving your heritage, for the sake of preserving your culture, this land can never be sold. If you want, you can lease this land out, but don't sell it. Because the moment you now sell that land, the change of use are coming in place. So it is imperative that all of us become cognizant of the things that we're introducing. This heritage, some of our cultures, despite the, sort of like terrorism associated with people encroaching into our lands and territories, people encroaching into our culture. Because I normally stand here and I say that we've been terrorized, stigmatized for many years. Despite all that, we have a culture which we believe. So I would like to persuade the distinguished senator to amend the following section before even bringing this bill to a vote. Because if you don't, I will be seeking to remove Section 8C, identify and manage of Grade 2 heritage resources in accordance with this act. It means that any Grade 1, if we are to go with this bill, will be taken to a place where we've created a job for somebody called a Director General to be able to collect a lot of resources there, collect all the money. Yet, if there was people who are coming to visit and they say Grade A, if they, let's say they decide we are going to charge X amount in Grade A, that money will only remain, Madam Speaker, in Nairobi here to be able to pay for the life of other people. So I think what we need to do is very simple. Even on the part where you are recommending that this DG, who is now the head of the administration, can receive money, donations, we need to be specific on that. The donations that are received, if the donations are received because of an artifact that came from Maasai land, then that money is directed to the museum in Narok. If that money is from West Pokot, it is sent to West Pokot. If it is from Kakamega, it is sent to Kakamega, so that we can be able to benefit from our own heritage. So that is very, very important. Madam Speaker, I'd like to summarize as follows. I support this bill because of the following. It helps us be able to ensure that we maintain our cultural identity. I like what Madam Speaker said earlier on, that I am proud of my culture. I come into here into these Senate chambers, adorned with my traditional artifact. I wish I could be allowed to come with my spear. Sometimes I sneak in a rungu. Don't worry. Sometimes I'm able to sneak in. You know, if you go into the archives of here, you will see that sometimes I'm able to sneak in a rungu once in a while. I end up putting our friends in trouble, but hey, such is life. But it's because I'm proud of my culture. I wish we could be in a position where we could even come here with a spear. I'm sure the bullfighter will also come with another artifact that he thinks it's important. And I hope that one day, even a day like this, we can amend your speaker's rules. A day like this, when we are discussing a very important bill like this, all of us should be allowed to come in dressed the way we want. Some, if you want to go the way you want to breathe well, so be it. You know, such is very, very important because it helps us. One of my biggest problems that I'm facing at the moment is that the younger generation, and I'm happy that I can see a few who are in these chambers, will be so disadvantageous in learning about our cultural heritage. You know, before, we used to have our grandparents who would sit down and talk to us about our historical identity, where we come from. And that's why I can stand here and I say that I originally came from Tanzania, which is, there was no border between Kenya and Tanzania. It was just Maasai land. But my heritage is mostly from Tanzania coming into this Kenya. I heard today the bullfighter talking about his heritage from Zambia, saying that, you know, maybe he came from there. That just shows that we have our brothers, we have our cousins, we have our sisters in other territories. So what unites us is to find what they find important and we keep it. Today, if you find a Maasai from Tanzania and a Maasai from Narok, we speak the same language, we value the same things. So it is upon us, Madam Speaker, to be able to say this is what is of importance to us that we want to preserve, not some cabinet secretary sitting somewhere given power by this act, or some CC of a county sitting there to be able to set up a committee to determine this is of economic value or this is of good heritage. No, it is upon us for us to be able to do that. It is also important, and the reason why I think I like what this bill seems to achieve, apart from those areas that I pointed out, for us to continue educating our children. Our own children, we need to educate them. My grandfather taught me about my culture. That's why I'm very proud of my culture. Today, if, let's say, because of our busy schedules, we don't find time to educate our children, to tell them this is about the Wanga Magere, or this is about Mumbi, you know, this is about Olonana, I think we can be able to either push it, and I was hoping that you would go to that direction, that this should be a subject that can be taught in early primary, so that when the kids are growing up, they can be able to understand. TikTok has messed us up. I mean, you know, let's call a spade a spade. TikTok has messed us up. You know, the internet has messed us up. People now, you'll see young kids insulting their elders. You know, that is uncouth. It was something which was unheard of. You'll see a young boy going there and saying, the bullfighter, F you, do this, whatever. Why? They don't understand the values that we have. These are the same values. The other day we were talking about the late Leonard Mambo Botella, when he was able to use humor to be able to remind us of the importance of our ethics, the importance of our values. You know, he used satire to be able to make us remember. So I think it is important that in this bill, in those local museums, which I fully support, to have a section which is fully educational. In that section also, I think now when we craft up legislation like this, let us also add an internship aspect, where the local schools provide internship for students who are doing history, who are doing culture, to come here and learn. Let them be the tour operators. If you go to a museum in London, you'll find someone who will be your tour guide. And the tour guide will have a detailed perspective of that culture, the struggles, the things that these people have gone through. Now, everything we're doing today, Madam Speaker, is going to determine what the future generation is going to be able to take as valuable. If we do not pass this fund these museums, the future generation will be lost. The future generation will be looking at the current generation as to what we are reading, TikTok and all that stuff. You know, Madam Speaker, yesterday I was talking to a young girl, and she said, we Gen Zs, the maximum kids we can get are 2. We will not buy houses, because why do we buy houses? The interest rate is 18, 20%. We don't have good salaries. So we'll just exist. How do you just exist? And that is why I'm saying it is about time that we now look within our own means and ask ourselves, what is it that we can do to change our future? The future generation will depend heavily on how we prepare ourselves. If we sit here and we continue just amassing a lot of wealth, lining our own pocket, putting our country into debt, such that the future generation, when they come, they cannot even be able to have an identity, all they'll be doing is working to pay that debt. It will be very wrong. So, Madam Speaker, education is key. Preserving our national heritage is also very key in terms of this act. And I support it fully, but I hope that the distinguished senator will make a few changes, particularly on the role of the Director General, the role of the Cabinet Secretary, and also delete that provision where you are talking about grading of the artifact. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senators. I have a communication. Honorable Senators, I want to give a communication on a visiting delegation from Kirinyaga High School, Kirinyaga County. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon visiting students and teachers from Kirinyaga High School, Kirinyaga County. The delegation comprises of 110 students and 4 teachers who are undertaking a study tour to the Senate. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish them all the best during their visit. I thank you, and I want to welcome Senator Boni Halone to welcome them and also to contribute to this debate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it's a pleasure for me to welcome the young people from Kirinyaga to this Senate this afternoon. And I do so because they don't know us very well. You'll be interested to know, young people, that when I was a young doctor, over 30 years ago, I worked at Kirukoya District Hospital, where, amongst other things, we developed the health center. I believe you call it the fathers. We are the ones who fixed it. This is part of the work that we have done for the people of Kenya. And here in the Senate, I am the Senator of Kakamega. Feel most welcome. When you leave, I don't know whether your senator is around. I will come and address you outside so that we know each other better. Madam Speaker, thank you that I got your eye on an opportunity to speak to this very important piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I therefore rise to second the bill on the Heritage and Museums Bill 2023 of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think the best place for me to start in my contribution is where is this law taking us in terms of the economic impact. The impact, Madam Speaker, is that this is the future of tourism in this country. I've heard you speak to it, but let me just borrow one statement from you. You spoke to what you find in the museums in the UK. I've also had an opportunity to go there in those museums, and you cannot imagine, it doesn't matter what time, be it in winter, be it in the summer, when you go to the UK, those museums are always full. They make money from people just visiting their museums. It is my belief that the future of tourism in this country will have to either grow or migrate from the current tourist attraction, which is just simply the white beaches at the coast and the obsession about the big five, which is okay. A leopard is a good thing, an elephant is a good thing, so is the lion, and so on and so forth. But inside cultural tourism is a treasure that is going to earn this country billions of dollars never imagined before. And I want to thank my brother, Bishop Racha Murgor Julius, for this great industry. Madam Speaker, since the distinguished senator has been organized enough to move us from the national then to the county, allow me, for purposes of being understood very well, to speak to the heritage of my community, the Baluya culture. Madam Speaker, just like your culture of the Kikuyu, we want to speak to these things openly and in distinguished platforms like the one in this Senate, for us to debunk the lie that when you're proud of being a Kikuyu, that when you're proud of being a Luhya, it is tribalism. It's not. Tribalism is negative ethnicity. But positive ethnicity, like what is being provided for in this bill, should be welcomed by all Kenyans who want to break fresh ground for our economy. If you come, Madam Speaker, to our 5 counties of the Luhya Nation, back in Kitale, there will be a museum. In Busia Town, there will be a museum. In Bungoma Town, there will be a museum. In Mbale Town, there will be a museum. And of course, the mother of all the counties, Kakamega County, there will be a museum in Kakamega. The museum in Kakamega will give our children and our visitors an opportunity to know that just like all the communities of the world, we also have our own heroes. And our heroes are not limited, Madam Speaker, to just the politicians. I wouldn't mind being called a hero myself, but I know my grandfather, Hayati Ihunyalo, Wakaluari Simbwa, Simbwa Shina Simba, was a greater hero than myself. And yet, no record exists of this great man. He teamed up, Madam Speaker, with the other heroes in my community, mainly a hero called Lusala from Shinyalu and a hero called Mambire from Shinyalu. And we had epic battles. It's unfortunate that heroism at that time, Madam Speaker, used war as a yardstick to define a hero. And these great heroes that I've mentioned are the ones who drove the pastoralist communities, the Maasais, the Kalenjins. We drove them out of the present-day Kakamega. I know the Senator of Kajiado of Narok, I beg your pardon, the district senator from Narok will be happy to know that until just the other day, we were having Maasais in Kakamega. Yes. In fact, the member of parliament, I think, of Gilgoris is, I've forgotten his name. He's just gone away. He left Kakamega just the other day and they went to Transmara and established families there and they have become Maasais. Yes, Sunkuli It is Sunkuli that you're talking about. Sunkuli Azadmi. He's a guy, no. He speaks Kiluya perfectly nice. Me, I speak a bit of Masai, thanks to my wife, Sake Yen. Sometimes speaks to the children in Masai, and I tell her, now what are you doing? You think my children are like bones. My children are not like bones. They are bullfighters, Madam Speaker. So, these heroes that we are talking about, we want to talk about our kingdom. The Wanga kingdom in Kakamega is a well-established kingdom, and these are things that will be on record. We want to talk about our musical artifacts. Not many Kenyans know that whether it is Alliance Girls High School, or it is Shimolatewa Boys High School, or it is whatever kind of school, when you go to traditional songs, when they sing, the songs that win are Luya songs, and those Luya songs come from Kakamega, the center of song and dance. Madam Speaker, it will give us an opportunity, therefore, to preserve our musical artifacts, including the kind of plays that traditionally are practiced by my community, which include, Madam Speaker, but not limited to Shinanda, Madam Speaker, Isukuti, Litungu, Shiriri, Ndebe, Itiolo, name it. The children who the Senator of Narok was calling the ones who practice the TikTok culture from my community have no idea what I'm talking about. But if we have this museum, then they'll be properly socialized. Indeed, with this kind of museum in Kakamega, I look forward to us preserving our traditional games, which include wrestling, shicholo, and indeed, bullfighting, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I look forward to our social norms being properly documented and recorded in respect of how traditional weddings are practiced, the burial rites, and yes, the unique circumcision rites. As a doctor, I've practiced across the country, and I'm able to see, just by seeing a patient, I can tell you if you are a Maasai or a Luya because of the way you are circumcised. Yes, this is it. And sometimes when I talk to the Maasai and they tell me why they circumcise in that particular manner, I say how scientific our community was, because it caters for specific times of a man cohabiting with a wife if she's pregnant or not. Madam Speaker, allow me to speak to the benefits and returns on the investment that we're going to make in this bill. This is a bill because of unlocking the tourism potential. It will speak to millions of jobs. As properly articulated by Senator Olekina, you need tour guides, you need drivers, you need the hospitality industry that backs tourism. And these are the jobs that we are going to create. What's more, the returns that will accrue from the gate collections when these tourists pay. Madam Speaker, I want to conclude by speaking to the issue of education and this bill. I see nothing wrong whatsoever if in the 6 counties of the Kikuyu, for example, in the first formative years, children are taught culture as their syllabus. In the 5 counties of the Waluya, children are taught in the first 2 years their culture, their language, and then they expand as they grow to be taught bigger things. I'm not too sure how old you are, Madam Speaker, but people of my age and below, we were actually, as a compulsory requirement, taught vernacular in primary school, primary 1, primary 2, and primary 3. It was only after we were moving into primary 4 that then they started teaching us a bit of Swahili and English. And you find that people, we are so, him he had, because he's a younger person, he had to rely on his grandfather. But as it was very easy, because the first 3 years you had to be taught culture. You're being taught in Kluya, Shirala, Bibiri, Vibaka. You are now counting. Madam Speaker, you would then be taught, for example, the vowels. We would be taught the vowels in vernacular. You would be taught ha, he, chi, ho, hu. I mean, Madam Speaker, this is what we are losing because of being obsessed with funny things called English. Yeah? If you want to try, you can either do things. You either get a Luya wife, or who will help you to learn, or alternatively, you behave as if you are clearing your throat. So you start by clearing ha, he, chi, hu. And there is no way a child would miss and fail an exam because you have taught him the vowels in vernacular. When you now, I listen to the way they are teaching the alphabet these days. I have small guys who are still learning those things. And I've lost them now. Where we used to say A, B, C, D, they say A, Ba, Buf. Ha, ha, pa. I don't understand them. So we have to align our education system with the need for us to maintain cultural relevance. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I now yield and move that this bill be read a second time. I support.
Thank you, Senator Halwale. I'm not sure whether the ha was parliamentary language, but I'll let it pass. Senator Mugeni.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, thank you.
He's not moving. We are in debate stage.
Yes, I don't.
Senator Boni Halwale.
I think Senator Boni should withdraw the
Can you withdraw the remarks that you are moving?
The debate. You cannot say you are moving.
Senator Mugeni.
Thank you, Senator Mugeni. It's also possible that a student can teach a teacher. Since I'm your teacher on parliamentary practice, I stand corrected. I didn't realize what I had done. If you had heard me at the end, I had said I support strongly. Yes, yes.
Senator Boni will implore on other senators to become seconders of many bills so that your mindset does not always think you are seconding a bill. Thank you. Proceed, Senator Mugeni. What is your clarification, Senator Kenywa?
Madam Speaker, I heard what the majority said, and I just wanted clarification because he sounded like what the kids of today are being taught is not important. When he said they are taught, instead of A, B, C, D, what they are taught, it seemed to me like he said it's not important what they are taught today.
Clarify whether the education today as it is still important. Senator Boni.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I hear the concerns of the Senator of Laikipia. And if I'm old-fashioned, somebody forgive me. I am so confused about the system of education that we have in the country. I actually don't know. This thing called CBC, Madam Chair, I have no idea what it means. In fact, I was joking with my farm manager, who told me that he asked his 5-year-old, not 4-year-old son, daughter, to spell her name. She's called Rosalia. And so to spell her name, so the girl said, the spelling of my name, Rosalia, is Ro-Sa-Lia. And then I said, Look at this CBC. Look at what it is doing to Rosalia. So, much as you guys like CBC, personally, I have a lot of reservations about it. We could do it better. I hear in Botswana, it has been done well, and for them to get there, Madam Speaker, they piloted it, I hear, for 10 years. As we got it and applied it in the same tradition that a child learns how to balance himself on a motorbike, and in the afternoon is a boda businessman or businesswoman. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Boni. Senator Okongo Mugeni.
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity to also make a contribution to this fairly important bill, the Heritage and the Museums Bill of 2023. Madam Speaker, the Swahili say, mwacha mila ni mtumwa. Mwacha mila ni mtumwa. Just, Madam Speaker, if you have traveled around the world, you will realize that many countries have put best effort to preserve their heritage, their culture. When you go to a country like Morocco, you will know that these are Moroccans. In this country, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, if you go to Maasai land, where Senator Oloikina comes from, you will immediately know that these are Maasais. They have preserved their culture. Unfortunately, some of the sub-tribes in this country, including my own, in Kisii, we are forgetting our heritage, we are forgetting our culture. We are losing our identity. You go to Maasai land, I'm sure almost 90% of the Maasai people can speak Maasai. Yes. And they are proud of it. They are proud of that culture. When you drive Narok to Kisii, every Maasai will be carrying a traditional, I don't know what's the significance, but you will find every Maasai as that traditional rungu, Madam Speaker. Tourists who come to Kenya may not know that there's a tribe called Kuria. Maybe they know about Kisii because we have Chinkoro. But they may not know, Madam Speaker. You go to a country, if somebody has come to Kenya and visited Masai Mara, they will, most unlikely will they mention Kikuyu sub-tribe or the Kisii sub-tribe. But they will tell you, are you Maasai? Because, Madam Speaker, the Maasai have been one of the most successful tribes in this country that have retained their heritage, their culture. It's really sad. Even for me, as a father, I feel sorry for myself because our children think that it's very fashionable to speak English and not to speak your local language. I mean, some of us went to school where from class 1 to class 4, Madam Speaker, the language of choice was your ethnic language. We had a book called Ratemo. I don't know, there's nobody here from Kisii. We had a book called Ratemo. And that was the introduction to our class 1, Madam Speaker. Nowadays, unfortunately, and I don't know why the rain started beating us, nowadays the introduction is Kiswahili, English. How I wish we can find room once more, because the Chinese are controlling the world, but they speak Chinese. They're not embarrassed, they're not ashamed of it. You go to Japan, the Japanese still speak Japanese language, but they're still able to be pace setters in technological development. But in this part of the world, we are teaching our children to think that if you speak your ethnic language, then you are primitive. That should not be it, Mr. Speaker. There is a very good reason, Mr. Speaker, why the Almighty God divided us to several tribes, so that we have an identity that we are proud of. Like I'm proud of being an Omogusi. That's why my names, I'm proud if you call me Okongo or Morgan. You can link me to my ethnic group of Omogusi. So I support this bill, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker. And from the onset, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I'm one of those Kenyans who are very proud of my own heritage and my own culture. When we grew up, Madam Speaker, we used to go through an initiation where the community used to be involved. When you are facing circumcision, the celebration was not for one family. The celebration used to be for the entire village. You invite your neighbors, they come, you celebrate, you take the traditional liquor for wazes, and you are moved to the next age group. So I hope, Madam Speaker, that this bill will take us back to the drawing board. We see where the rain started beating us, and we can really be proud and preserve our heritage, our culture. Coming to the museums, you travel to other countries, and you'll be surprised. The queue you will find in a museum, when you go inside, there isn't much. I'm sure we could get more that we can preserve as a country than what you will get out. Even having pictures of our legend. Who will not like to come to this country and they see a photo of Kipchoge Keino put somewhere in a museum, and they will pay? Madam Speaker, I'm told the tourists that we attract to this country is roughly around 2 million, with our population of about 50. Countries in Asia that really have nothing for people to see, like Japan, tourists visiting Japan in a month, not only in a month, is close to 3 million. In a month. I'm told Rwanda, because they have something they call mountain, chimpanzees or something, is ahead of Kenya. Is ahead of Kenya. So this is one way, Madam Speaker, if we create museums in many of our counties, it's one way of attracting tourists. And tourism, we all know, is one of our highest foreign earners for our country. So we need to grow our tourism in order to support our economy. We are going to have a budget of 4.2 trillion, Madam Speaker. If we are serious that that budget should be supported by substantially by our local revenue, the way to look at is tourism. The way to look is tourism. If you go to central Kenya, there is a lot that we can learn about Mau Mau. Get us pictures of the likes of Kimathi, Dedan Kimathi, the wife of those people who fought for our independence, Madam Speaker. The weapons, I don't know. Don't we have people, Madam Speaker, in central Kenya who kept rungus that were used to fight Muzungu, or a spear that killed a Muzungu in Nyamira and then the larger Kisi? We are told that there is a man who is called Otenyo. Otenyo speared a Muzungu, whom Kisi had nicknamed Nyaigoti. Speared a Muzungu in Kisi town and killed the guy. And that spear, Madam Speaker, here is kept somewhere by the Kisis. I'm sure if we go to central Kenya, we'll find a lot that can be kept in our museums, and then we interest our visitors who are coming in to visit various counties and see what the various sub-ethnic tribes in Kenya are proud of. That will be part of our culture, and that will be a way of attracting tourists. I've gone to museums in some countries out there, and Madam Speaker, you see barely nothing, but you pay money. Because when you land, the taximan, the guy at the airport will go to great lengths to interest you to visit the museum. But when you go there, there is nothing. How many of us have jetted into Kenya through Jomo Kenyatta and there is somebody to interest you to visit a park that is just within the city. And how many countries have a park within the city? There is nobody. You are entering Nairobi, there is nobody to interest you and say, visit a national park, which is just in the boundaries of the city. Nobody. You go to Dubai, the moment you land, there are people queuing, trying to interest you, go to the desert safari, I don't know where. And when you go to desert safari, these are our roads, rough roads here, you just see vumbi and nothing. So we need to do a lot. I want to appeal to our CS tourism to tap into the potential that this country has in tourism. And she can bring us a lot of foreign earnings if only she tapped the potential that is there, the untapped potential in the tourism sector. In Kisii, we have soapstone. There is no country in Africa that has the Kisii soapstone. There is none. It's only found in Kisii, Tabaka, in an area called Tabaka. There is no any other in South Mogrango. Even if you go to West Pokot, that stone is not there. Go to Kajiado, it's not there. We go to Murang'a, it's not there. It's only found in Kisii, in Africa, no any other country. But many tourists come to Kenya, they go to Masai Mara, full stop. Come back to Nairobi, board a plane, back to Europe. But if we had a desk at the airport that is marketing that industry in Tabaka there, I'm sure we will get a lot of revenue. And you know, we sell those carvings. When you go to Europe, you will pay a leg and an arm. We used to do that as arts and crafts when we were young boys in school. Then, Madam Speaker, I'm happy that we are allowing the board to have a full mandate of recruiting the MD for the National Museums of Kenya. But then again, we have a problem that is cropping up in this country. Madam Speaker, even where you create a board like this, I was in a political function where somebody was pleading with the president to assist somebody to be appointed, and where we as members of parliament have passed a law that says recruitment will be competitive and based on merit. You are a lawyer, Madam Speaker. You know the agitation by lawyers preceding the 2010 Constitution. You know what the MOU between Raila Amolo Odinga and President William Ruto is about. It's about fairness. It's about inclusivity. It's about eradicating corruption. So I feel so sad when, as legislatures, we sit down, we pass a beautiful piece of legislation, we send it to the president signs and says, as a country, we want Kenyans to be picked to sit in a board. We give them power to invite applicants, they interview them, and the one who merits will be appointed. But again, you find us, politicians, again want to go back to the president and say, assist my person to be appointed. That's not nice. That goes contrary to the spirit of our 2010 Constitution. Like now we are doing interviews for IEBC. Madam Speaker, you appointed us through a motion on the floor of this House. We went to NADCO. We spent a lot of time, burned the midnight oil. We brought to the floor a fantastic piece of legislation. And we said, let us appoint people to sit in the panel that will interview commissioners to IBC. Because we don't want to take the country to what was preceding the 2007 elections, where people felt that The appointment of the commissioners was not free, it was not impartial. The people who are picked were not going to preside over free and fair elections. But still you find politicians are talking and saying, Your Excellency, we want you to appoint for us so and so in IBC. Yet the law has given that task to an independent panel. Madam Speaker, we are sending the wrong message to Kenyans. We are going Kenyans to have it in their heads that one of the players in the political contest is the one appointing the commissioners. We should do public participation, tell Kenyans that we have commissioners in office, let them be given an opportunity without any interference to interview candidates, and let the best. Anybody from any of the 47 ethnic tribes, Madam Speaker, can be a chair of IBC and the others can be commissioners. And we run an election that will not invite another 2007 situation in our country. So I hope the board that is proposed in this bill, Madam Speaker, will take the assignment seriously and appoint the managing trustee of the National Museums of Kenya freely, without any form of interference from anybody. That's how we'll create a country, Madam Speaker, that respects rule of law, where power is distributed, where the concept of a limited constitution is entrenched. You know the concept of limited constitution, that power is spread and shared by many institutions. And that even where you have a president, his powers are limited by what is in the constitution or in statutes. If the power to appoint has been given to a panel, the president has got no authority. If power to appoint has been given to the Public Service Commission, let them assert their independence. The Speaker, I sat, Madam Speaker, in Kenya National, in Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission as a chair of the board, interviewed the executive director and 4 assistants without any phone call or anybody attempting to interfere with that assignment. And even if you said no, what will happen? Nobody will kill you, because you are doing a job that has been given to you by the Constitution and by our statutes. So I want to urge, as a way of also having a good heritage as a country, let us have this spread of power, president, ministers, interview panel, independent commissions, so that everybody can have a sense of belonging to this beautiful country called Kenya. So I want to support this bill, Madam Speaker, and hope that once it's enacted, it will go a long way in ensuring that we as Kenyans can again be proud of our heritage, be proud of our culture, so that when I go to West Pokot, I'll find people of West Pokot still proud of their culture, proud of their heritage. Same for me as Omogusi, same for you from Kikuyu, same to my sister here from Kajiado. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Osotsi Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first of all, I'll start by supporting this bill, the Heritage and Museums Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, this bill actually repeals the National Museums and Heritage Act of 2006 that basically was established to manage all the national museums and the heritage of this country. But as you know, Madam Speaker, the fourth schedule of the Constitution provide that cultural issues, e.g. Museums, is one of the devolved functions, and therefore a function that should be handled by our county government. So the current act, Madam Speaker, is offends the Constitution because it doesn't address what is contained in the fourth schedule of our Constitution. So this is a good attempt to try and align the prevailing law on museums and heritage to comply with the Constitution. And Madam Speaker, I know there are many, many other provisions in law which have not been aligned to the Constitution. They are still basically referencing the national government with very little on county government, and yet those functions are either shared between the two levels of government or have been devolved. So this is long overdue. We would like to give a legislative mandate, legal mandate, sorry, to our counties to be able to manage the museums and various assets on national heritage in their respective counties. Madam Speaker, museums and heritage is a very, very important thing to any country. And I think this country has never taken matters of museums and heritage very seriously, because if you visit other countries, especially the capitals of most countries, you realize that there is a lot of investment in museums and heritage. I've just came back about 3 weeks ago from Moscow. And if you walk around Moscow city, almost 90% of Moscow city is museums and heritage sites. They will show you various pieces of heritage across the city. All the streets, most of the buildings have been designed to preserve the national heritage. And Madam Speaker, that does a lot to our country. In terms of even tourism, tourist attraction, in terms of even preserving the sovereignty of a country, it is very important, because our youth would want to know how their forefathers lived, what they did, who are they. That information is very important and promotes patriotism in a country. So there is a lot that the country can gain from protecting its heritage, from investing in museums, and basically protecting the assets, the cultural assets, in terms of collecting, documenting, exhibiting the materials, and basically the whole process of managing the artifacts and all that. I think that's very important to any country. If you go to a country, a city like London, you see heritage all over. If you go to the city of Berlin, you see heritage all over. But how much heritage do you see in this country? Madam Speaker, we are even destroying buildings of heritage in this country. The other day, Madam Speaker, you heard some people complaining about the renovation to State House. And they were saying, yes, as much as we want modernity, but we must try and protect the heritage of key buildings, key strategic buildings in this country, so that our youth, those who are here and those who will be born many years to come, will remember that this country had an history. This country had people who believed in heritage. So, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I think we need to invest seriously in our heritage. We need to invest seriously in museums, and that can only happen if we take museums and heritage matter seriously. The situation at the moment, Madam Speaker, is not really good for this country, and if we are not careful, we will not have a history for this country, because we will be forgotten. All the things that we have done will be forgotten in this country. So this bill, I think, is an important piece of legislation which we will should all support. Madam Speaker, if you allow me to go through the various parts of this bill, like, for example, Part 3 of the bill, it contains provision related to financial matters, how the funds of the National Museums of Kenya will be sourced, how the annual estimates will be done, and the investment of these funds. Madam Speaker, I think we must find a way of ensuring that the national museums and the heritage side also draw money from the incomes we get from the tourism sector, so that that money that is invested there will be used to develop the museums, will be used to develop the heritage assets, and that thereby creating opportunities for more tourists to visit, and that will be key in the development of this sector. Madam Speaker, Part 4 of the bill provides for the management of national heritage, antiquities, and monuments. I think this is very important, Madam Speaker. You have seen the monuments that we have in this town, in this city, Madam Speaker. Look at the Tomboya monument and many other monuments in this city. They are not properly maintained. In fact, in some cases, they are even defaced. And I think this is where the county government of Nairobi needs to do something about it. In other countries, the heritage sites are protected, heavily protected. But if you have like Tomboya monument, which is not protected, then what are you trying to say? You are trying to say that, yes, we have a monument for Tomboya, but because you have not properly protected it, then you expose it to vandalism, and therefore, in the end, actually defacing the name of Tomboya. So I think that Part 4 helps us in ensuring we have a consistent management of the national heritage and all the assets, including the monument. Part 5 of the bill basically deals with the requirements of obtaining an exploration license before pursuing excavation or surface search operation for buried monument. Madam Speaker, this is very important because we have had cases where foreigners come and carry out exploration quietly and take away vital heritage assets to other countries. That has happened before, and we have had cases even involving the heritage assets for, I think, the second Vice President of Kenya, which were taken away, and now Kenya is struggling to get it back. Part 6 of the bill provides for the protected areas and ways of compensation to the owners of the land declared to be a protected area. Madam Speaker, I think this is very important because the Cabinet Secretary will be empowered to issue regulations on how to prohibit or restrict access to an area which is earmarked for the development or use of these important assets. Part 6 of the bill, Madam Speaker, deals with the issue of acquisition, protection, and maintenance of a monument. Even inspection, repairs. I've just made a reference to Tomboya Monument, which to me it requires protection, maintenance, and repair. Also acquisition, how do you acquire these heritage assets? Guardianship of this monument. I think these are things which will help in protecting these assets. So this bill is very progressive, and I am also highly motivated by the proposal to have a heritage tribunal. A tribunal where when you have a dispute around matters of ownership of these assets, dispute around protection, dispute around maintenance, they can be taken to a legal entity where cases can be brought. And therefore, having a heritage tribunal, it is very important in this case. Part 9, no, part 12, sorry, makes provision for miscellaneous matters, including regulations that the Cabinet Secretary in charge of matters of heritage can come up with. It also provides for how the County Executive Committee member responsible for heritage matters will formulate regulation in their county pertaining to matters of museum and all that. So, Madam Speaker, this is a very progressive bill and is long overdue because the current legislation act basically needs to be aligned to the 4th schedule of the Constitution. So I think this will empower counties to invest in museums and also invest in acquisition, maintenance, and protection of heritage assets in their respective counties. Because, Madam Speaker, as I said earlier, if we want to be recognized as a country, as a brand among nations, we need to protect our heritage. We need to ensure that we maintain our history and we protect our history. I have heard Senator Halware talk about the heroes who are forgotten. Madam Speaker, I know of so many heroes, for example, from my county, who even participated in war. World War, some participated in World War, some participated in fighting the colonialist, but they are not documented anywhere. Every time you talk about the struggle for independence, we are told about Mau Mau. But there are so many other people who participated in this struggle who are not documented, Madam Speaker. I think the Kenyan government must take the initiative of looking for these people. Who are they? What did they do? For example, Madam Speaker, my own grandfather was detained by the colonists in Rusinga Island, where my good friend Moses Kajwang comes from, for 5 years. And I have been struggling to even bring up that matter so that this old man can be recognized. But no one wants to recognize him. And he was there for 5 years. So, and I know there are many, many other people who have made a contribution to this independence of this country who are not documented anywhere. But we hear names of people who had very limited contribution, but they are enjoying their space in history. So, Madam Speaker, even as we talk about this, I think some level of investment needs to be put around these heroes who have contributed to to the making of history of this country. Madam Speaker, even talking about heroes, I know we have a relevant legislation on heroes, but I think this needs to be aligned to this new law that we are coming up with on heritage and museums, so that our heroes are a part of the heritage of this country. When you walk around this city, Madam Speaker, you come across heroes who are doing so badly in life, and yet they made a huge contribution to this country. For example, Madam Speaker, when I was growing up, we were fans of football, listening to the radio. And there were big names of footballers. People like Kadenge, people like Murila, people like Austin Oduor and all this. But these people, Madam Speaker, no one is thinking about them. No one is thinking about them. We cannot talk about heritage of this country without recognizing the people who have contributed to that heritage. So even as we pass this bill, let us think about our heroes and their contribution to the history of this country, their contribution to the heritage of this country. And that's why I started by saying that a country that has no heritage is not a country. If you go to other countries, especially in Europe, then you realize how matters of heritage are taken seriously. You go to a city like Berlin, every meter you walk, you see something of heritage. That is what should be happening in Nairobi. We don't want to see our heritage sites, maybe like buildings or even monuments, being destroyed just because we want modernity. Just because private developer wants to do something modern, we need to protect it. And we need to document it for the benefit of this country. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say this is a very progressive bill, and want to join those senators who have supported this bill to say that I also support this bill, and I hope the National Assembly will take it up once we pass it, and pass it within the shortest time possible. Madam Speaker, even as I talk about the bills that the National Assembly needs to work on, I find it very frustrating that whereas this Senate takes the initiative of quickly processing all bills, whether they're coming from the National Assembly or here in Senate, the National Assembly is taking their sweet time to process our bills. And now we are almost half in our term. And we have so many bills that have been taken there, which are likely to lapse, Madam Speaker. And that is not a good sign. One of the bills is the bill by my friend here, Senator Kajwang, on county boundaries. County boundaries. This is a bill that the National Assembly should have taken seriously and passed it like yesterday. I know I am affected, boundaries between Kisumu and Vihiga at Maseno. Senator Cheruiyot here is also affected, the boundary between Kericho and Kisumu, and many others, Senator Nandi and other places. So I think the National Assembly is letting us down by sitting on bills which are very key to this country. Like this particular one that we are discussing, Madam Speaker, it will not be proper to hear that this bill will go to National Assembly and maybe take another 1 year or even lapse without being considered. That would be so sad for this country, because matters of national...
Thank you very much, Honorable Senators. I have a communication to make on visiting the students from the Technical University of Kenya took in Nairobi County. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting 11 students from the Technical University of Kenya, TUK, in Nairobi County. The delegation is in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. And I want to ask Majority Leader to just welcome them.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I join you on behalf of the House and our colleagues, those that are here and maybe those that are in the chamber, to welcome this visiting delegation of students from the Technical University of Kenya. The university actually closest to this house, Madam Speaker. I hope that they get to enjoy their time with us, learn a thing or two about debate. What they are presently witnessing is a debate on a bill that is before this House, Senate Bill number 8 of 2023, otherwise known as the Heritage and Museums Bill. It's a privately sponsored bill, so that's why members have the opportunity and the time to deliberate on it. I'm sure if they had come earlier, they would have observed something else. I wish them well in their studies and always never tire to remind them that they are the leaders that we are looking forward to passing on this country to. So take every opportunity like now to prepare for the baton of leadership that will soon be in their hands so that they can take Kenya to greater heights. I thank you and wish them well in their studies.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. Senator Peris Pesito Biko.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me also join the Majority Leader first to welcome the students from the Technical University of Kenya. Madam Speaker, some of them are personally known to me, and they are most welcomed, Madam Speaker, to watch the debates in this House and even to learn more and even to claim, some ownership of or belonging to this House. Later in the future, they will be the ones on this floor, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to contribute and to support the Heritage and Museums Bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, one time I was honored to be appointed a board member of the National Museums of Kenya. And I got to learn a lot of things that go on at the National Museums of Kenya, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I learned that a lot more goes on in the museums of Kenya than just, the conservation and the storage of old artifacts and a lot of things from our heritage, Madam Speaker. There is also a lot of research that goes on at the National Museums of Kenya, Madam Speaker. Actually, at the Museums of Kenya, you will find the most learned Kenyans probably, who are quiet, who have spent their time 30 years and above on research, and they are doing a lot of great things, but things that may not have come out to the public to be known, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at that time, the chair of our board was Issa Timami, today the governor of, is it Kwale? I think Kwale. Lamu. Issa Timami, the governor of Lamu. He was my chair then. And so, Madam Speaker, I actually learned that there is so much that goes on at the museum. The research that goes on there, even, about various diseases, various things in this country, plants, animals, a lot of things, Madam Speaker. And so if we were to take time and know what goes on at our museum, we will appreciate the existence of the National Museums of Kenya. And I think this bill comes at the right time, Madam Speaker, to address a number of issues and to even make the museums more valuable to Kenyans, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our devolved units also now have a chance you know, in participating in securing and conserving our heritage, Madam Speaker, our traditions and cultural artifacts, Madam Speaker. It's because the museums are part of, you know, the devolved functions, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is a lot, and there are communities, of course. I am proud to belong to a community that are naturally conservators. We have preserved our culture, we have preserved our traditions, our dressing, our cultural orientation. We have marketed this country, Kenya, Madam Speaker. We have given Kenya a face and a name internationally, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, it is also good that for those communities that have held and conserved what is African, what is Kenyan, and what has given us an identity, you know, there should be a way for them to earn from that, Madam Speaker. You know, there should be a way that people can earn royalties from what they have conserved over the years, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have seen in the community you come from, the Kikuyu community, a beautiful dress that most of the times you use for a show, and you know, some of those cultural functions, Madam Speaker. And this is part of our beautiful heritage, things that we should conserve. The Kambas still have their chade and all that, Madam Speaker. I'm sure every community has something that they would want to preserve. And we have, in this country, a rich heritage, Madam Speaker, not just of tourist sites, like in Kisumu, the Western region. They have, I'm sure, Senator Kajwang will tell us a lot of what is in Homa Bay and Migingo and all those areas. I've heard of the stone, is it called Kitmikai? Kitmikai. I would want to reach there. Naivasha, there is the Hell's Gate and all that. Madam Speaker, this country is rich. There is also what we have lost, Madam Speaker, because of the Western influence. We have lost a lot of our traditions. We have lost even direction, Madam Speaker. We have lost our cultures that were rich and that were orderly. Madam Speaker, even without the Constitution in my community, there is a way the community would run its affairs. There is a way that we have silent unwritten laws that would apply. If you steal, let's say, livestock, there is a way that is punished. And there is a way that punishment becomes completely prohibitive and deterrent, a deterrence measure. So that you don't repeat that kind of thing. There is what is a way, if you kill, if you murder someone, there's a way it's handled in a way that will make it impossible or really, really difficult for someone to repeat that kind of act. I wish there was we have conserved our laws, our traditional laws, even the unwritten ones, Madam Speaker. If there is a way we can conserve these traditions, Madam Speaker, because our kids may not have a chance of getting to know that beautiful, rich side of our history, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I was also thinking, you know, counties should start maybe cultural events, and I think some have started. Like I have seen Narok, Kajiado, and Samburu have started cultural events that will help, you know, to bring back that face of the community that is getting lost, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I really do support this bill because it will go a long way. In fact, what I have seen we are slowly losing is like our traditional houses, Madam Speaker. I was brought up in a traditional Maasai home. And today when I tell my kids just like a story, because things have changed. Our ways of living have changed. Those Maasai Manyatas have gone. And it's sad that we are losing them. I don't know if there should be a way for us to retain them. When we visited Turkey sometime last year, I realized they still have their very old buildings, which they are keeping. It's not that they are not unable to change, but they don't want to change. They don't want to lose. You know, buildings that have a family history, of a lot of things that they don't want to lose. Madam Speaker, I wish we can also hold with value and, you know, with respect what was our history, what was our culture, our traditions, the good things, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, sometimes when we even cross the border to go to these sides of Tanzania, Arusha, I feel bad and I blame the colonialists for the artificial boundaries, Madam Speaker. Because across the border, I see our brothers. I see our community. And I'm like, all the way to Ngorongoro, all the way to Arusha, Moshi, Bomangombe, all those sites, Madam Speaker. Extending to Samburu, extending to Narok and Kajiado. That was a whole country of our own. I mean, I'm not, I'm imagining we would have had a nation of our own, Madam Speaker. And that's not to exclude any Kenyans, but I imagine that the artificial colonial boundaries should not have come to separate us, to bring, you know, a separation, even differences in terms of nationalities. That today we have brothers who are called Tanzanians, and I need a passport to go to Tanzania, Madam Speaker. I think we lost a lot because of the influence of the Western cultures that came to distort our way of living, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I support this bill, you know, with all my energy and passion, because I believe it will help us to secure and protect that which is valuable to us. Madam Speaker, we have also lost a lot of our heritage. You know, we are told we need to patent, and if you don't patent, you find somebody using the Maasai mangek or those traditional decorations and ornaments that we wear, and they are used elsewhere and all over, and you cannot claim it's yours just because someone Mzungu went ahead of you to do whatever they call patenting. We didn't know what is called patenting. It's just coming up now. And we cannot lose what is ours in the name of patenting, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Kajwang Moses Otieno, Homa Bay County Senator.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill brought by Senator Recha Julius Murgor, the Heritage and Museums Bill of 2023. Madam Speaker, this is a very detailed bill. If you look at the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons, it has a lot of detail, and it is quite obvious that Senator Murgor applied his mind and perhaps even got the services of experts to come up with a bill that shall give effect to the 4th schedule of the Constitution that has devolved museums to county governments and has allowed the national government to only deal with national museums. Madam Speaker, these are some of the functions of county governments that have not been transferred for far too long. National museums, libraries, archives, and even roads. Actually, for roads, everyone knows what should be done. But because of the control of money at the center, we are yet to devolve or transfer the roads function fully to county governments. Madam Speaker, we had said previously that the national government should be dealing with classes A, B, and C roads, whereas classes D going downwards should go to county governments. So the museum function has not received the attention and focus that the roads function has received. It has not received the attention and focus that the water function has received or the land function has received. Madam Speaker, museums sometimes document the civilization of a society. And whenever you travel, many a times, you find that nations have curated their natural heritage and history in museums. When you go to Egypt, you land in Cairo, one of the main tourist attractions is the Egyptian Museum. I've had the opportunity to visit the Egyptian Museum. Madam Speaker, it tells you of the glory of the Egyptian civilization, a civilization that was perhaps greater than the Greek, the Roman, the Syrians. And sometimes you find that because history has been written in a skewed manner, if you do not visit some of these museums like the Egyptian Museum, you will never be able to contextualize and understand the scale and size, the complexity, as well as the superiority of the ancient Egyptians. But because they have curated all this, they have put it in a good museum which attracts millions of visitors annually, even current and future generations will be able to tell or understand the story of the ancient Egyptians. When you go to Washington, D.C., along the National Mall, they proudly have several museums, and one of them that stands out is a Smithsonian Museum. Madam Speaker, you go to London, you've got the London Museum. You go to the Vatican, you've got the Vatican Museum. You go to France, in Paris, the Louvre. When the Louvre caught fire, it was as if the heart and soul of France was burnt. And Madam Speaker, when it was restored, President Macron invited other heads of states to witness the reopening of the Louvre. That tells you how significant and how central museums are to civilizations or to telling the story of nations or telling the stories of societies. Here in Kenya, Madam Speaker, we have the Nairobi Museum and 22 other regional museums. Unfortunately, unless this is now being taught in the CBC system, but many typical Nairobians will not be able to mention more than 3 museums across the country. Of course, the one we have on Museum Hill is quite legendary, and a lot of children go there to be able to see some of the remains that the likes of Richard Leakey, and the early anthropologists were able to uncover. If you go to Mombasa, Fort Jesus has also been designated as a national heritage. Madam Speaker, I was talking to Senator Madzayo recently, and he was telling me that he was quite upset that when he went there, people are still forced to pay entry fees, and over and above the entry fees, there's a usual e-citizen convenience fee. So sometimes it makes it a little bit expensive. I have seen that Senator Murgor has got a 3rd schedule that talks about exemption of national museums of Kenya from payment of access fees, permit, license fees, and export fees, heritage research. I am not very sure what that entails, but how I wish that for residents, we would minimize, we would put at a very minimal the entrance fees or access fees to museums to encourage more Kenyans to be able to visit those museums. I do recall recently, Madam Speaker, when the CS for Tourism did a waiver of park access fees to our national parks. I think it was a public holiday. And then to spur domestic tourism, the CS waived access fee. And Madam Speaker, what was witnessed in Nairobi, particularly at Nairobi National Park, there was serious traffic on Langata Road because Kenyans came out in numbers, families in hundreds and thousands, to go to the Nairobi National Park, simply because the fee had been waived. Perhaps if we cannot get rid of the access fees to our museums, we could find National Heritage Days when citizens can go to those museums. As I've said, that the National Museum here in Nairobi, it's mostly visited by students. If you come from a school deep down in West Pokot, perhaps a visit to the National Museum is not an option because the distance is great and the cost is very high. And so you'll find that it only serves metropolitan students or metropolitan people. And so many, many children still go through the education system without being able to see what is contained in that National Museum. Madam Speaker, this bill, in giving effect to the fourth schedule, should see to it that the 22 regional museums are handed over to county governments. In Nyeri, there's a museum. In Kisumu, there's a museum. In Migori, we've got Thimli Chohinga, which is a protected site that captures an ancient Luo civilization. This should now go to county governments. But if they are going to county governments, functions should be accompanied by funds. So when we are talking about aligning the existing law to be in line with the 2010 Constitution, it should be functions plus funds. We are sending, or we are allowing county governments to take over the regional museums, allowing the National Museum to continue managing or administering matters of national importance and national heritage. But let's make sure that when we are doing our division of revenue and when we are doing our allocation of revenue, we can clearly cost what it takes to finance the museum functions. Madam Speaker, it is not just the artifacts that are going to county governments, but also the human resource and personnel who have been sitting in Nairobi under the national museums. And we need to be very careful on how we delineate and how we transfer the staff as well as the artifacts to the county governments. Madam Speaker, this bill makes reference to antiquities and protected objects. And Madam Speaker, that has mirrored the existing legislation. And one thing about antiquities and protected objects, I read somewhere that there are about 30,000 antiques and protected objects relating to Kenyan civilization and Kenyan culture that are sitting in Western museums and Western private collections. Madam Speaker, there was a project driven by guilt, particularly from the Western world, that they took away a lot of things from Africa, and particularly in Kenya, it has been documented that 30,000 objects estimated have been taken away. Some are in France, some are in the UK, some are in New York or in the US. Madam Speaker, there's a project driven by guilt and trying to run away from restitution, where they are proposing, using advanced new technology, 3D printing, that they can do 3D printing of the artifacts and bring them back to Africa, while the original continue to stay in private collections or in public museums in the West. That is completely unacceptable. We cannot take substitutes of antiquities and protected objects that were made by our forefathers and take a 3D printed option. Madam Speaker, I hope that even as we prosecute this matter, we shall bring or breathe some life into that project. One of the antiquities, and the reason why I got interested in this, was a traditional Luo headgear that was taken away around 1910 or 1911 by one of the colonizers. He took it into his private collection, and upon his death, he donated it to the National Museum. It is sitting there. Everyone knows who brought it there, and everyone knows where that person found it. Now, they're offering my community an alternative of a 3D printed headgear. That is completely unacceptable. And I hope that by strengthening the functions of the National Museum of Kenya and ensuring that we've got proper regulations around it, they'll have the strength, they will have the legal basis to be able to fight those ridiculous arrangements that are driven by guilt and that are trying to run away from the real story. It is not just Kenya that has suffered. Nigeria has lost what they call the Benin bronzes, serious, valuable cultural, historical artifacts. In fact, Madam Speaker, many of these collections are sitting in British museums. Many of them are sitting in New York. Some of them are at the Smithsonian. You go to Washington, you go to the Smithsonian, and you're finding an elaborate collection of Benin bronzes having come from Nigeria, being displayed in Washington. These things need to be brought back to Africa. We need to bring them back to our museums, but we can only make a strong case when we have a proper legal framework, when we have museums that work, when we have museums that are not dogged with the ridiculous corruption scandals that we have heard from our national museums. Madam Speaker, it was a moment of extreme embarrassment when this nation was subjected to certain scandals that are currently in the courts of law and issues to do with payroll fraud, where a museum is supposed to undertake certain core business, which is looking for artifacts, anthropological conversations, tracing antiquities. And then the managers who have been entrusted to do that, instead of focusing on that core business, they get into fiddling with payrolls and, ghost workers running into millions of shillings. Even donors, even research institutions that would wish to work with the national museums cannot trust a museum that deals with ghosts. I don't think that ghosts is part of our antiquities and protected objects or ghost workers for that case. So we need to make sure that we professionalize that institution. We need to stop this thing of making political appointments to the National Museum. Let us look at competence. Let us look at people with a proven track record in that particular space, not people who are going to manufacture certain scams just to line their pockets. Madam Speaker, in terms of archaeological sites, when we were in school, we were told about Olorgesaile, Kariandusi, Lomekwi, and even Gedi. We need to protect these sites. 2 weeks ago, I was in the village, and somewhere in my village, for a long time, there's been a walled village or a stone-walled settlement that dates thousands of years. Perhaps it was done by the Maasai, but it is still questionable because the Maasai are not known to have done stone-walled settlements, because those thousands of years back, even the Luo had not settled in that particular area. So we still think that it was a Bantu settlement or a Bantu civilization. When I came back, Madam Speaker, I found that the land, of course, had not been gazetted, it had not been secured. It was private land. And the owner of the land sold it to somebody else, who went and tore down the ancient stone walls and put up some shady mabati structures to act as hostels for students of the nearby Technical Training Institute. So we need to ensure that the National Museum or the county museums, and this is why it's important to bring this now to the county government, because there's no way the guy sitting on Museum Hill would have known that there's an ancient civilization down there in a village called Waondo or in any other part of the country. And so when this function is handed over to counties, we are hopeful that they'll be able to go down, identify those sites, protect them, and also encourage professional ways of doing the excavations and making sure that we can be able to get additional artifacts out of those sites. Madam Speaker, this bill also speaks to monuments. Now, monuments, and Madam Speaker, my very first experience to travel out of Africa, I went to Portugal, a beautiful city called Lisbon, or they call it Lisboa. Madam Speaker, Lisboa is famous for many things. It is famous for its port wine, which is legendary, but it's also famous for beautiful monuments. Everywhere you went, there was a monument of a war hero There was a monument of a historical figure, and they are kept well. They are well curated. The gardens around them are fresh, and people and children come to play. People come to jog and exercise. Look at the monuments we have here. Madam Speaker, I cannot tell you any significant monument that we have, even in Nairobi, that can act as an attractive destination for people. The ones we have here at Uhuru Park, they are celebrating a political regime that most Kenyans generally think did not deliver for them. Do we have monuments that speak to the history, to the heritage of this nation? And Madam Speaker, if we are going to devolve the museums to county governments, have we thought about the devolution of monuments? So, for example, the monuments here in Nairobi, are we pushing all of them to Nairobi City County, or there are some that will be maintained by the national museums or the national government? In some countries, they have appointed very high-ranking officers just to be in charge of monuments. In some countries, I think in the UK, there's a royal appointee to take care of gardens, to take care of monuments, because most of the monuments relate to members of the royal family. So even in our country, monuments are supposed to tell the story of a nation, not the kind of shady things we saw in Eldoret, Madam Speaker, when we were trying to celebrate our record-breaking athletes. And then people went and crafted very absurd and ugly structures. You go to the West, and things are made out of marble. Things are made out of fine granite or made out of bronze. We have even seen gold-coated and gold-gilded monuments. You go outside the Buckingham Palace, the residence of His Majesty the King, the monuments there, they shine because they tell of the days when the sun rose and set on British territory. Of course, that's a history that is far gone. So we need to invest in monuments, but alongside a monument, we need to ensure that we have gardens, recreational parks. If you go to Jivanji, I am not sure what you'll find, but Jivanji has now become a place for people just to discuss politics rather than to reflect on the history of this nation. As I conclude, there is a section in this bill that I think should not even be there. That is a section on exports. Madam Speaker, why would we even consider a situation where we need to export our antiquities? Part 10 of the bill talks about export. And it talks of conditions relating to export, and it gives discretion and power to the Cabinet Secretary to authorize. And Madam Speaker, for avoidance of doubt, Clause 69 says, a monument or an antiquity or a protected object shall not be removed from Kenya unless its removal has been specially authorized in an exploration license or by an export permit issued by the Cabinet Secretary on the recommendation of the National Museums under this section. And I'm asking, and Senator Murgor will help us, why would we ever imagine that we can export our antiquities, protected objects, and matters of national heritage? Have we, the Turkana boy, do we imagine that we can take the Turkana boy to some Smithsonian museum? If there was a spear of an ancient Maasai chief and we found it, do we imagine that we can export it elsewhere? You can imagine if Egypt, having discovered the tomb of Tut, that boy king, that there was a provision for them to export the gold and the jewels and the riches that were found in the pyramids. Madam Speaker, this section on export, this one we will need to be convinced, because it is this provision that has led to 30,000 antiquities sitting in private collections in the West. And now they want to give us 3D printed versions of that. So, Madam Speaker, this section of exports must be clearly thought out. But generally, I support the bill. I've seen that Senator Murgor has also put in place a heritage tribunal, which does not seem to have been there in the original bill. And, Madam Speaker, this is the reason why the Senate exists, to give effect to the Constitution. And this is a bill that every senator should be seized of, because this is a function that lies squarely in county governments and a responsibility for the Senate. I therefore support, but I hope that we can rationalize the other sections, for example, the issue of exports, to see to it that this is fit for purpose. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Kajwang. We have no other senator wishing to contribute to this motion, so I'll call upon the mover, Senator Mulgo, to reply.
Madam Speaker, I'm very thankful to the speakers who have contributed to this motion, and especially Senator Mohamed Faki, Senator Enoch Wambua, Senator Veronica Maina, Senator Olekina Ledama, Senator Dr. Khalwale, Senator Mogeni, Senator Sotsi, Senator Tobiko, and Senator Kajwang. I also want to thank the committee for facilitating the introduction of this bill, and look forward to the passing of the second reading. Finally, Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 66(3), may I request that the putting of the question be deferred to another day. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mulgo. The putting of question is deferred to the next sitting of Senate. And now I will reorganize the order paper to defer order number 17 to order number 25, because the movers of those orders are not here, so that they will be called out in the next sitting of this Senate. Honorable Senators, there being no other business on the order paper, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 12th March 2025 at 9:30 a.m.
All right, we welcome to the show and a special